Chapter 2353. Qin Zhao didn't tell 23rd Blood Mary about this. Not far away, the mask shop kept bringing out items. Everything was packed up. 23rd Blood Mary hurried to take care of it. Qin Zhao didn't linger either. He carried Jerlin and left. He passed by the coastal park. The lights were dim here. There were many tourists. It looked like the night view of the coastal cities in China. Not far away, a beautiful woman sat cross-legged on a stone block. Qin Zhao walked over to the woman. When he reached the stone block, he looked up at the woman. "Long time no see," Qin Zhao greeted her. The woman wore jeans and a strapless top. She supported her chin with one hand. Her hair fell over her shoulders and waist. She had some makeup on, but she looked extremely flirtatious. "I'm surprised," the woman said coolly. "I didn't think we'd meet again like this." "I didn't think we'd meet again. It's fate, I guess." Qin Zhao also smiled faintly. His gaze landed on the woman's waist. He could faintly see the fox mask under her hair. "Thank you for helping me get this mask." Qin Zhao was a bit surprised. "It's hanging there. Anyone can get it. I can't think of a reason to thank me. Your daughter is a guide and you're a spellbreaker. I waited in that shop for 3 days but couldn't find the mask until you and your daughter appeared." "You mean some kind of spell was cast on the mask?" "Yes." "Then what does the mask mean to you?" "The green hill leaves, the white bones mourn, the endless yellow sand, the golden millet in my dream, the long way home, the mirage is ethereal, the tearful eyes, the green gauze curtain." "What's this poem called? I've never heard of it. Is there more?" Qin Zhao really didn't know much about poetry. He'd never heard of the woman's poem either. "Whatever, you're a common person. I don't want to talk to you anymore." Qin Zhao pouted. "Fuck, you're calling me a common person just because I've never heard of this poem? That's too much." The woman stood up. "I'm leaving." "Okay, goodbye. I made those masks. They're just ordinary toys. After I came out of the seal, I learned some craftsmanship in Japan. Did you throw them away?" The woman looked at Qin Zhao unhappily. "No." Qin Zhao took out the mask. He had placed it in his spatial ring. The woman nodded in satisfaction. "Your daughter is so talented. How about becoming my disciple?" "Hee hee. If you don't want to, then so be it. It's not good to be so sarcastic." If a woman was unhappy, Qin Zhao wouldn't accommodate her. Although they couldn't be considered as mortal enemies, they couldn't be considered friends either. What's more, this woman had a notorious reputation. Letting his daughter be her disciple would really have no future. The woman pulled a strand of hair from her head. "It's for your daughter. I've seen stingy people, but I've never seen someone so stingy." Qin Zhao's face twitched. "Is your hair made of gold?" "Guanyin Bodhisattva gave the monkey at least 3 strands of hair and you only gave 1 strand of hair? This strand of hair of mine is a secret technique of the Green Mountains. It's called black hair, not in vain." "What's the use? As long as you wear an accessory with this strand of hair, you won't be deceived." Qin Zhao was a bit stunned. Then he licked his face and accepted the strand of hair happily. "I have a daughter. I plan to have a few more in the future. Your hair seems pretty good." The woman's face twitched. She turned into a wisp of smoke. "Fuck, she ran so fast." Qin Zhao murmured, recalling the poem the woman had just chanted. This woman was too strange. Or was there something hidden in the poem? If he looked at it literally, it was like the inner monologue of someone who was looking for a way home. Tamamo was looking for a way home? Legend had it that the 9-tailed fox's hometown was Qingqiu. But according to modern scholars, the legendary Qingqiu should be in Gaoqing County, Hezi, Shandong. How could there be miles of yellow sand in Shandong? Whatever. This had nothing to do with him. He shouldn't think too much. Qin Zhao shook his head. This wasn't his expertise either. Even Fei Lai might be better at it than him. Fei Lai's lips moved from feng shui to studying metaphysics and ancient Huaxia's supernatural theories. Qin Zhao decided to talk to Fei Lai later and see if she could discover anything. The next day was the final trial of the Battle of the Holy Glory. All the participants would enter the final ring. All the teams were split up to draw lots, so it was possible to draw one of their own team members during the draw. Of course, even during the drawing of lots, there was no lack of Dharma spells and divine powers. As long as one was capable, it was possible to get a bye. This seemed like cheating, but it was actually giving some people a chance. Some people were just not good at fighting. They'd had to go through so many difficulties. Now that they were good at something and were forbidden from using what they were good at, the Battle of the Holy Glory would be meaningless. They could just set up a ring at the beginning. The Battle of the Holy Glory was a grand event in the spiritual world because the decennial Battle of the Holy Glory didn't just choose the strongest person. Of course, the one with the strongest combat power had a great advantage. Just like the church's team, Matthew's team members were extremely strong and rarely had a worthy opponent. Thus, they were the seeded team for this Battle of the Holy Glory. But there were a few seeded teams and many dark horse teams. In short, it was like the 8 immortals crossing the sea. Whoever had the ability to walk to the end and stand in the final ring with their own abilities had nothing to say. The final trial wasn't held in the Four Seasons Palace. Instead, it was in another alternate space. It was a vast and boundless grassland. Qin Zhao carried little Zhilin. When he came to this alternate space, he was even a bit surprised. In terms of area, this alternate space was even larger than the Wasteland Market. Of course, in terms of scale, it definitely couldn't compare to the Wasteland Market. The Wasteland Market had projections of buildings in the real world. It was a masterpiece created by the efforts of countless spiritualists over thousands of years. The alternate space they were in now was very simple. There were only lush turf and sunlight shining in from the real world. Spiritualists kept coming in from the outside. They were more or less like Qin Zhao. They were all spectators. The participants of the Battle of the Holy Glory had already come last night. They came here first mainly to familiarize themselves with the environment. Just then a figure appeared in the sky. The figure appeared from the source of light. Under the illumination of the light, it looked extremely majestic. It's Grandpa Celestial Master. Zhilin shouted, pointing at the figure in the sky. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2354. Today, Zhang Tianyi was dressed in traditional Taoist clothing. He wore a white robe and held a horsetail whisk in one hand and a sword hilt in the other. He wore a jade crown on his head and his gaze was sharp and solemn. Zhang Tianyi stepped through the air and everyone immediately made way for him. Zhang Tianyi waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a wisp of clear air spread out. Everyone felt a wave of fresh air brushing past their faces. Tianzhao Yuanjing, therefore you have thoughts. Only the 3 pure ones can flourish. May you always be with me. The moment Zhang Tianyi opened his mouth, he spoke a Taoist mantra. Most of the people present did not understand what he was saying. Qin Zhao vaguely remembered that there was such a passage in a Taoist book he had bought for Fei Lai. It wasn't that Qin Zhao had seen it before. Fei Lai had read it when she was studying. This book seemed to be called The Records of the Supreme True Words of the 3 Pure Ones. When Qin Zhao had first heard Fei Lai read it, he had felt that it was choppy and he couldn't understand it at all. But when Zhang Tianyi recited this, Qin Zhao felt the surrounding spiritual qi move around Zhang Tianyi. At this moment, someone in the crowd cried out in alarm. Heavens, I've broken through. Great Celestial Master, please accept my bow. After saying that, the man bowed his head and kowtowed. He kept knocking his head on the turf, knocking it again and again. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. Was this guy hired by Zhang Tianyi? At this moment, people in the crowd broke through one after another. Only then did Qin Zhao believe that Zhang Tianyi wasn't bluffing with his Taoist words just now. It really had a magical effect. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao didn't feel anything. Alright, you can all leave. Zhang Tianyi waved his horsetail whisk again, and all the people who were kneeling on the ground were lifted up by an invisible hand. Zhang Tianyi took a few more steps forward and stopped again. Earth fighting formation, gold probing hand, 10,000 nourishing water. Zhang Tianyi threw out a small gold nugget. The gold nugget began to twist and wriggle as it grew larger. It was originally the size of a fist, but in the blink of an eye, it became the size of a basketball. In the next instant, the squirming thing suddenly exploded and a large amount of water gushed out. The water seemed to be endless as it spread in all directions. But when he reached the crowd, he stopped. Sky wall limit, water shape, 1,000 trees fill the top. Soon after, a towering tree grew out of the swamp. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that it was a 1,000-year-old tree. However, under the urging of Zhang Tianyi's spell, the towering tree once again ignited with raging flames. What Zhang Tianyi used was the 5 elemental dharma, although the 5 elemental dharma was a relatively common dharma spell in Taoism. But when Zhang Tianyi used it, it was miraculous and extraordinary, as if it was an immortal technique. Using that small and ordinary piece of gold to create a swamp was exactly in line with the 5 elements' mutual generation of metal and water. Then water gave birth to wood, wood gave birth to fire, fire gave birth to earth, and earth gave birth to metal. Of course, the gung metal was no longer ordinary gold. Instead, it was an extremely rare material. Grandpa, heavenly master spells are so fun, I want to learn them too. Then he's doing magic? I really don't know if he's bored or something. Qin Zhao scoffed. Zhang Tianyi looked at Qin Zhao from afar. It was noisy, but Zhang Tianyi still heard Qin Zhao's words. But now was not the time to argue with Qin Zhao. Holding the gung metal in his hand, Zhang Tianyi said, "This is the gung metal of the 5 elements. Celestial Master, why did you forge this in front of everyone?" No one dared to question Zhang Tianyi at all. They did not think that Zhang Tianyi's actions were confusing. They only felt that they were not smart enough to understand Zhang Tianyi's intentions. In addition to this piece of gung metal, I've also hidden 4 other 5 elemental extraordinary items here. They are water element, fire element, stone element, and wood element. If these 5 elemental extraordinary items are combined into one, they will be able to break through all defensive techniques in the world and seal the opponent's 5 elemental energy. Hearing Zhang Tianyi's words, everyone was in an uproar. Force control spells were actually defensive spells. In other words, no matter what spell the opponent used, it could be broken. Moreover, it could seal the opponent's 5 elements' power. In other words, as long as it was metal, wood, water, fire, and earth spells, they would all be sealed. This was equivalent to taking off the opponent's clothes and tying them up so that they could not attack. After all, most spells in the world were related to or branched from the 5 elements. Even though the Western spiritual world did not have the 5 elements theory, most spells still followed the principle of the 5 elements reinforcing and restraining each other. As long as you're a fellow Taoist here, you can search for these 5 wondrous items. As long as you find 4 of them and combine them with this gung metal in my hand, you'll be able to form the Spellbreaker hairpin. The item will belong to whoever manages to form it. Also, if you're a participant in the Battle of Holy Glory, as long as you successfully form the Spellbreaker hairpin, you'll be able to obtain the title of Holy Glory. The crowd was in an uproar again. Celestial Master, I don't mean to offend you, but your rule is unfair to most spiritualists. After all, if it was just a competition in the ring, it would still be a competition of strength. But if the title of Holy Glory Cultivator was decided this way, the final outcome would become very complicated. Individual combat ability would no longer be the deciding factor. This was why many people felt that it was unfair. But Zhang Tianyi did not think so. I'm giving those participants who aren't good at fighting a chance. If anyone has any objections, you can step forward. I'm not being unreasonable. Zhang Tianyi said that he was being reasonable, but his attitude was completely unreasonable. He was not discussing with others at all. He was just here to inform them. At the same time, Zhang Tianyi raised his right hand, and the originally flat turf suddenly bulged. A slope appeared in front of everyone. Zhang Tianyi casually waved his hand, and the originally uneven slope was suddenly cut off. The slope became flat and smooth. This move directly dissuaded those who were about to argue with Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi flew above the platform and used a divine ability to divide the platform into 5 parts. Each part of the platform was engraved with the words metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Now, I'm going to talk about the rules of this ring. Zhang Tianyi said, these 5 rings correspond to metal, wood, water, fire, and earth respectively. If your magic attribute happens to correspond to the 5 elements, then you will be automatically enhanced or suppressed. Of course, in addition to choosing your opponent, each contestant also needs to choose a ring. If you are defeated or fall off the ring, you will lose. If the winner kills the opponent, it will also be regarded as being eliminated and will be severely punished. So you'd better not take revenge in the ring. If any of you think you can escape from the old Taoist's eyes, just do it. Alright, let's start drawing lots now. Because there are a total of 510 participants, there will be 2 people in the first round who will advance directly. As for the losers, they will be directly eliminated. There are no revival matches in this ring, so please take each match seriously. Chapter 2355. Then it was time to draw lots. Just like Zhang Tianyi had said. As long as you were capable, you could do whatever you wanted. The participants of the Battle of Holy Glory didn't even hide it when they drew lots. They openly used magic to draw lots. Of course, some people were happy while others were worried. Not every participant knew how to use this kind of magic. In fact, most spiritualists weren't good at it. Just the first round of drawing lots took a few hours. Then it was time for the 5 rings, metal, wood, water, fire and earth, to compete at the same time. Apart from Zhang Tianyi, who was hosting the matches, there were also a few disciples from Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect in charge of recording the results of each ring. After the first match, the next team took over without any delay. There were more or less spectators gathered around each arena. Of course, there were also some participants of the Battle of Holy Glory. Most of them were observing some of the stronger opponents. That way they would be prepared. Of course, there were also some people who wanted to hide their strength. However, those who were able to survive until now were not weak. Apart from a few extremely strong ones and a few extremely weak ones, middle-class spiritualists were still the majority. Therefore, those who wanted to hide their strength were mostly thrown off the ring before they could use their trump cards. Qin Zhao went to the fire ring. Gaia was in this ring. Halys and Enrich had already competed. They were quite lucky. Their opponents weren't weak, but they'd all defeated them. Gaia was the third. Gaia had the blood of a fire dragon, so the fire ring was like adding wings to a tiger for her. The fire ring released high temperatures, and the intense fire elements in the surroundings allowed Gaia to use 120% of her strength. Gaia's opponent was a spiritualist who specialized in mind magic. Mind magic was very difficult to defend against. Most of the time, the victim didn't even know it. However, it required high concentration when casting mind magic. The special environment made it hard for the spiritualist to concentrate. The temperature in the fire ring was 70 degrees. Plus, the surging fire elements made it extremely difficult for him to cast spells. Gaia's Firebird could counteract the impact of mind magic. In terms of individual strength, magic characteristics and environment, Gaia had the absolute upper hand. Gaia had already gained the absolute upper hand. Qin Zhao was surprised. In the previous 2 matches when Halys and Enrich had fought, Qin Zhao had been surprised. Helis' opponent was relatively weak, so Helis won easily. Next was Angelite's match. The arena was made of wood and both sides were proficient in the rarer enhanced speed attribute, so the match became a pure competition of speed. In the end, Enrich crushed his opponent with an absolute advantage and won relatively easily. Looking at Gaia, the environment, strength and opponents, Gaia had crushed their opponents in almost every aspect. Qin Zhao didn't believe that all 3 of them were so lucky. Since all 3 of them had chosen such an opponent at the same time, Qin Zhao believed that someone had arranged it. They didn't have foresight, prophecy or any magic related to luck. Therefore, Qin Zhao believed that they wouldn't have won so easily if no one had arranged it. There was even a high chance that he would lose. He had watched many arena matches before. It could be said that there were many opponents on the same level as them. At least 40% of the participants were on par with them. If they were to fight, they would have a 50% chance of winning. About 5% of the participants were obviously above average in terms of strength. The remaining 1% were overwhelmingly stronger than them. They weren't even on the same level as them. Of course, there were also 10% who weren't strong enough and stayed until the last round due to various reasons. However, all 3 of them had met this 10% or the other 40% who weren't strong enough. Qin Zhao could only believe that there must be some shady business involved. Of course, as the winner, he and the supernatural organization definitely wouldn't announce it to the world. Qin Zhao couldn't help but look at the central area surrounded by the 5 arenas. At the moment, no one entered the empty space. There was only a chair and a wooden table with a tea table in the huge space. Zhang Tianyi just sat there, sipping his tea with a leisurely look on his face. As if sensing Qin Zhao's gaze, Zhang Tianyi gave Qin Zhao a meaningful smile from afar. Qin Zhao spat silently. Gaia didn't have any other thoughts about this opponent. After all, she didn't know how strong her opponent was, so she transformed in the fire arena. When she turned into a fire dragon, many people around the arena gasped. After all, spiritualists with dragon blood were very rare. One could even say that they were the only ones. Of course, there were actually many cases of humans and dragons mating. Some of them also gave birth to offspring, but most of them were humans. Because dragons had low fertility, even if they mated with other races, most of their offspring would be from other races. For example, Gaia's parents were actually ordinary people. It was just that one of her ancestors was a dragon. The dragon blood in her body was already very thin. It was only awakened in her generation. This was why awakened people with dragon blood were so rare. The spiritualists below gasped. Of course they were surprised but not shocked. After all, they were spiritualists and had seen everything. The mind mage's expression changed when he saw Gaia's fire dragon form. He was already listless. Facing Gaia, he could feel the dragon's might surrounding him. He couldn't even release his spiritual power completely. He could only barely block the dragon's might. Gaia suddenly flapped her wings, forming a terrifying heat wave that pounced at the spiritual mage. Seeing that things were bad, the spiritual mage immediately used his spiritual power to create a psychic barrier in front of him. Although the psychic barrier was invisible and intangible, it could deflect most magical and physical attacks away from its original direction. Gaia's attack was naturally deflected by the barrier. But this was only Gaia's probing attack. Her follow-up attack followed closely. A scorching dragon's breath suddenly sprayed at the spiritual mage. The spiritual mage could only use a portion of his spiritual power. Not only did the spiritual mage block Gaia's dragon's breath, but it also condensed the dragon's breath in front of him, forming a fireball. Gaia's dragon's breath was blocked, but she kept spewing out high-energy dragon's breath. Meanwhile, the spiritual mage tried his best to control the fireball condensed by Gaia's dragon's breath. The two seemed to be in a stalemate. They kept doing the same thing. Chapter 2356. Spiritual power could be understood as an extension of one's limbs. When one's spiritual power reached a certain level, it would turn into telekinesis. It was like being able to move one's limbs freely. Anything that could be done with one's limbs could be done with telekinesis, or even better. As for the mind sorcerer who was fighting Gaia, his mental strength had already reached the level of telekinesis. Not only could it block physical attacks, but it could also block magical attacks. It could even control the opponent's magic. The more dragon breath Gaia spat out, the bigger the fireball her opponent created. Now it was up to the person who couldn't take it anymore and would be eliminated. Gaia's continuous output also made the fireball created by the spiritual mage even more terrifying. One must know that the fireball in front of him was not condensed from ordinary elements, but was condensed from dragon breath. Usually, when an elementalist used magic to gather fire elements, the fire spell they created was equivalent to refining the fire element. The energy level would increase by 10 times. Dragon breath's energy level was much higher than fire spells. So, if the fireball created by the spiritual mage went out of control, the consequences would be unimaginable. Qin Zhao watched the battle in the ring. "Papa, can Auntie Gaia win?" "She already won," Qin Zhao said. "But that uncle seems to have blocked Auntie Gaia's attack." Qin Zhao chuckled and didn't explain further. They indeed seemed to be in a stalemate. But the fireball created by Gaia's opponent was too terrifying. There wasn't enough space in the ring for him to release the fireball's power. Even if he chose to die with Gaia, if the fireball went out of control and exploded, he would definitely be the most injured. Moreover, Gaia was a fire dragon to begin with. She had high resistance to fire damage. Plus, she had a much stronger body than her opponent. So, even with the same amount of damage, they would suffer different injuries. Moreover, judging from the stalemate between the two sides, both sides were about to run out of mana. So, Gaia would definitely win. Of course, as one of the participants, Gaia didn't know. She felt like she was about to suffocate. But she didn't want to admit defeat. After all, Hallis and Engelit had already passed the first round. It would be too shameful if he lost the battle even though he had the advantage. At that moment, the mental mage on the other side shouted, "I surrender. I surrender, I surrender." He already felt that the fireball in front of him was about to go out of control. He felt like he was holding a ticking time bomb. This time bomb would explode as soon as it left his hand. He did not intend to perish together with his opponent. Of course, if he really had such a thought, he might be the only one who would die in the end. He might not be able to say that the other party would come out unscathed, but at the very least the other party would not die. Therefore, after analyzing the final result, he decisively gave up persisting. Zhang Tianyi suddenly moved and appeared in the sky above the fire arena. Winner of this round, North American Supernatural Organization, Gaia. With that, Zhang Tianyi pointed at the fireball that was about to go out of control. The fireball immediately broke free from the mind mage's control and was thrown high into the sky by Zhang Tianyi. The fireball exploded in a dazzling brilliance high up in the sky. For a moment, it was almost comparable to the reflection of the sun in the sky. Of course, it was only for an instant. Even if it was just the reflection of the sun, it had infinite brilliance. Everyone looked at Gaia in the arena in surprise. This was because Zhang Tianyi's disciples were in charge of announcing the results of all the previous matches. However, Zhang Tianyi had taken the initiative to announce the results of this match. Could Gaia be another foreign disciple that Zhang Tianyi had taken in? No one found it strange that Zhang Tianyi had taken in a foreign disciple. As the number one person in the supernatural world, or even the number one person in the world, the number of people who sought to become his disciple could be said to line up from Jinling to Shanghai. As for Zhang Tianyi's criteria for choosing disciples, he basically took in anyone he found pleasing to the eye. Therefore, other than a few personal disciples and direct disciples, there were plenty of outer sect disciples. Some of the disciples followed Zhang Tianyi and listened to a few lessons or just in name. However, to be able to become Zhang Tianyi's disciple even in name was extremely impressive and useful. In the underworld, basically everyone would give face to Zhang Tianyi's disciple. The onlookers were puzzled, thinking that Gaia would become Zhang Tianyi's disciple again. However, this was understandable. After all, Gaia had displayed extraordinary strength in the arena. Even in this trial filled with strong people, she was a very outstanding one. Moreover, she also had the bloodline of the Dragon clan. Therefore, becoming Zhang Tianyi's disciple wasn't unacceptable. Gaia didn't care about the other people's random thoughts. She returned to human form looking somewhat tired. Qin Zhao walked over to Gaia, who had jumped off the arena. "How is it, Gaia?" Gaia glanced at Qin Zhao. "I'm tired. This time I took advantage of the geographical advantage. If it was another arena, it's hard to say who would win. A win is a win. There's no geographical advantage. Since you chose the fire arena, it's your luck," Qin Zhao said, comforting her. Zhang Tianyi had said before the match that luck was also a part of strength. However, Gaia couldn't smile. She already felt so pressured in the first match. Her next opponent would definitely be stronger. He had no confidence at all. "You still haven't used your trump card today, right?" Qin Zhao suddenly asked. Gaia nodded. "Yes, I hid one." "Then that's it. If you used it, you definitely win too. So you didn't win because of the geographical advantage. It's your own ability." "My opponent has it too," Gaia said. "But he probably had to pay a huge price, so he didn't use it. Even if he used his trump card, he might not be your match." Qin Zhao didn't get to the bottom of the matter. Gaia didn't voluntarily tell him what her trump card was. This meant that she didn't want to say it yet. She probably wanted to save it for when she really needed it in the arena. Of course, the fact that the three of them entered the second round side by side was also a joyous event worth celebrating. If not for the second round tomorrow, Qin Zhao wanted to throw them a party to celebrate. The first round of the arena still brought them both mental and physical pressure and fatigue. Therefore, they needed a full rest. The first round lasted for about 12 hours. Some of the battles in the arenas lasted for a long time, while some of the battles in the arenas ended almost instantly. But after the first round, Zhang Tianyi found Qin Zhao. "Qin Zhao, the battle of the Holy Glory is about to end." Yes, more accurately, the trouble is about to end. Ever since Qin Zhao started, he had encountered countless troubles. The Battle of the Holy Glory was a grand event in the spiritual world, but it was also a gathering of troubles. It seemed like all the troubles would explode here. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2357. Qin Zhao ignored Zhang Tianyi's words and pretended that he didn't understand. "Thank you, old Zhang. But as the saying goes, capable people do more work, right?" Zhang Tianyi's face twitched. He wanted to point at Qin Zhao's nose and scold him. But looking at Qin Zhao's shameless face, he held it in. "It's just that I can't do it alone. With Blood Mary working with you, there's probably no one in the world who can trouble you. Those so-called troubles are just clowns before you. Mary's old. She extended her life for a few years, but she won't do anything if she can." Zhang Tianyi looked at Qin Zhao with a bitter expression. Thankfully, Baifla is also in the Shangqing state now. His combat ability is even greater than Blood Mary's and he's knowledgeable. He can take over Blood Mary's position. Zhang Tianyi was a bit angry. He turned to stare at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao's eyes darted around. He didn't meet Zhang Tiany's gaze. Qin Zhao, it's boring if you do this. What do you think is interesting? I gave your 3 teammates a lot of benefits, Zhang Tiany said straightforwardly. You arranged it yourself. I didn't ask you to do it. Do you believe that I'll eliminate them in the next round? Zhang Tiany threatened. Perfect. I didn't plan on letting them get the Holy Glory title anyway. It's not valuable and they know what they're capable of. Zhang Tiany's face darkened. He looked at the stubborn Qin Zhao. What exactly do you want in order to help me? Qin Zhao thought about it. Zhang Tiany's headache was probably a tough job. But Qin Zhao also wanted to see if it was profitable. So he looked at Zhang Tiany hesitantly. If that's the case, I'll make a list for you. You help me kill the people on the list. For every person you kill, I'll give you a secret technique of Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect. Whether it's you or your subordinates, as long as it's suitable, you can practice it. You think I'm too greedy? Qin Zhao waved his hand. Actually, I'm happy to help you, but you treat me as a dirty killer. Isn't that inappropriate? Zhang Tian's face darkened. This bastard's appetite was really not small. Let's do it this way. Each target will get a secret technique and a refreshing cleansing pill. What the hell? It's a type of medicinal pill that allows the human body to feel a stronger fluctuation of spirit energy. Although it can't really cleanse the tendons and meridians, its effects are very close. Zhang Tiany said, this kind of pill is rare even in our Longhu Mountain's Celestial Master Sect. Every refreshing cleansing pill requires precious materials and a skilled alchemist to refine it. It takes up to 81 days to obtain a finished product. This thing works on me. It's useless. You and I are both in the Shangqing realm and have long comprehended heaven and earth. That pill can only enhance our perception of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Compared to our own small world, it is many levels lower. However, it is a rare treasure for your men. Qin Zhao didn't really believe Zhang Tiany's words. 3 out of every 10 things the old man said were lies. It was still unknown whether these mystic arts and pills had any value or were of little value. Moreover, he had to commit murder and arson. No matter how he looked at it, this matter did not seem reliable. Qin Zhao believed that Zhang Tiany would not kill the innocent. However, he might be tricked by Zhang Tiany and fall into a trap. Who are they? Qin Zhao asked. Zhang Tiany took out the list that he had prepared. Qin Zhao suddenly felt like he had been tricked. All of his reactions and even the conditions he had proposed were all within Zhang Tiany's expectations. Qin Zhao took the list in annoyance. However, when he saw the introduction of the first person on the list, a trace of murderous intent flashed across his eyes unconsciously. Darling, how about going to play with Grandpa? Grandpa Celestial Master, where are you taking Jerlin? Jerlin stared at Zhang Tiany. Where do you want to go? I want to go to the zoo. I want to see Big Simba. Zhang Tiany looked at Qin Zhao. What's Big Simba? I have 2 lion cubs. One is called Simba and the other is Nana. My daughter says that Big Simba is an adult male lion. Fine. Zhang Tiany reached out and carried Jerlin over. Is there anyone on the list that I need to pay special attention to? Or do you need to pay special attention to them? No. If we only look at their abilities, there's no one that we need to pay special attention to, Zhang Tiany said. Zhang Tiany said, but most of these people have very deep backgrounds and powerful forces. There was a sanatorium in the outskirts of Istanbul. It was a private sanatorium. Usually when rich people needed it, it would be rented out. Of course, it was more like a holiday villa than a sanatorium. However, there were many advanced medical equipment in the villa. There were also doctors all year round. There was even a special clean and sterile operating room. The rich people who stayed here could get good medical support if they needed anything. Even if there were some illnesses that the doctors here couldn't handle, they would ask the best local or nearby doctors for medical support. But recently there was a special guest staying here. It wasn't exactly a guest because the guest was the owner of the private sanatorium. There were a few people in the living room of the sanatorium. They were all dressed differently. One of them sat in a wheelchair, but he didn't look dispirited. Instead, he had an extraordinary aura. Chairman, how's your recovery? The one who asked was extremely large, taking up the entire 2-meter-long sofa by himself. His clothes also looked like they were about to burst. The muscles on his face gave off a fierce feeling. I still can't fully control this body, so I can't move too freely. However, I can already use mana. The man in the wheelchair was the famous chairman of the Hermit Order, Avit Kong Senator, a man who carried all the sins of the world. At the same time, he carried the heavy and laughable mission of ruling the world. This body of his wasn't his original body. Instead, it was obtained through a trade with a secret organization. This body could be said to be the perfect body. The body of a top-notch strengthening type spirit controller, be it in terms of speed or strength, had already reached a superhuman level. Coupled with his original mana source, he was able to transfer his soul, consciousness, and mana. This allowed him to reach the pinnacle of spirit controllers in every aspect. However, this perfect body wasn't truly perfect. Even though his transfer ritual went very smoothly. But to activate this perfect body, a certain special method was required. Blood, the blood of a human child. Chapter 2358. Furthermore, the blood required to power this body wasn't the blood of a normal child. Rather, it was the blood of a few exceptionally talented children. There were spiritualists all over the world, so their children would naturally have a higher chance of awakening compared to normal children. Because of that, their children were naturally more talented than normal children. And as for where the world currently had the most spiritualists, of course it was Istanbul. The density of spiritualists here far exceeded other places by 100 times. Furthermore, the spiritualists here were the most outstanding in the world. Of course, there were also quite a few spiritualists who brought their own children with them. Because of that, Avit Kong Sin and his subordinates came up with a series of plans. They would search for children suitable to extract their heart blood in Istanbul and capture them. Of course, they had their own plans for the targets they chose. If it was the child of a normal person, it would be the easiest to capture. But if it was the child of a spiritualist, then they would have to investigate the strength, background, and influence of the parents. Because of that, many members of the Hermit Order appeared near kindergartens, hotels, and scenic spots. Kindergartens were the most likely places for local children. Hotels and scenic spots were the most likely places for foreign spiritualists and their children to appear. When they caught the child, they would eliminate the root of the problem and kill the parents as well. This was to prevent the situation from escalating and hindering their later plans. The Hermit Order's past deeds had proven that when it came to killing and robbing, no one could compare to them. Because of that, no one had noticed their plan until now. At least that was what they thought. Guild leader, is this body really as outstanding as they say? Avit Kong Sin glanced at the big man. Even if I can only sit in a wheelchair right now, you still won't be able to defeat me, the big man grinned. President, I don't mean to look down on you, but you clearly don't know me well enough. Bolt, you can try. Avit Kong Sin sat in his wheelchair, his gaze still as confident as ever. This big guy called Bot wasn't a pushover. Even if he was facing his boss, he wouldn't back down because of this. As he stood up, a thick mane grew out of Bolt's body, making him look like a beast in human form. His body emanated a vicious and brutal aura. Your savage magic is much stronger than Hulu's. Seems like I've underestimated you. Avit Kong Sin looked at Bolt with praise. Hulu's. Mr. President, you're comparing me to that half-baked person. That's an insult to me. Bot's ruthless aura grew heavier. Since I haven't truly used the wild god's power, if Lord President is willing, we can still pause. Once I truly use the wild god's power, then President will have to defeat me to end this battle. Although Avit said he underestimated Bolt, his face showed an inexplicable confidence from start to finish. It seems that the guild leader still refuses to admit that he made a mistake. Bolt's face began to change into that of a wild beast. A pair of thick canines grew out of his mouth, and spots appeared on his mane, making him look like a leopard in human form. Just use the power of the god of desolation, Avit Kong Sin said lightly. Lord Guild Leader, it's not wise to get so close to a believer of the gods of the wilderness. Bolt was originally an enhancing type spiritualist, and after worshipping the savage gods, his enhancing type magic coupled with savage magic allowed his physique to improve in all aspects. No one could defeat him at such a close distance. In other words, he could defeat anyone at such a distance. He was confident that he could defeat even the Supreme Heavenly Master. A smile appeared on Avit Kong Sin's face. Bolt abruptly raised his right arm and swung it down. The other members of the Hermit Order hurriedly dodged when they saw this. Bolt's attack directly tore apart Avit Kong Sin in front of him. At the same time, the ground in front of him was torn apart. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was only Bolt's physical attack without any magical properties. Just that alone was enough to cause such terrifying damage. Oh no, guild leader. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Avid Kongson was indeed powerful. But that was a thing of the past. Avid Kongson was heavily injured not long ago, causing him to be paralyzed. Apart from his head, the rest of his body had completely lost the ability to move. This was also the reason why he had to change his body. Although Avid Kongson said that his new body was very good, it was even better than his previous body. It was even more outstanding than his previous body, and it even made up for the weakness of his previous body, which was not strong enough. But he still couldn't move in the end against Bolt's terrifying attack. There was no way their president would be able to escape. Amidst the smoke, Avid Kongson's voice came again. Not bad. Not bad at all, much stronger than I imagined. Avid Kongson sat in his wheelchair unscathed. Bolt's attack seemed to have deviated and didn't hit him. Bolt retracted his arm and looked at Avid Kongson in surprise. How did you dodge it? Others might think that he was being merciful. But he knew very well that he wasn't being merciful. He was serious about that attack. Looks like you still have your consciousness, you weren't corroded by the power of the wild gods. That's because I only used a little bit of power, it's not enough to corrode me. But I'm going to be serious from now on. I'm looking forward to your seriousness, Avid Kongson smiled. As soon as he finished, Avid Kongson's expression changed. Our battle ends here, there seems to be an uninvited guest. Everyone was a bit surprised. An uninvited guest? They didn't notice anyone approaching them. At this time, a presence suddenly appeared in their range of perception. Bolt's gaze focused. The power of the wild god in me seems to be reacting to this presence. Hatred, anger, pain. Looks like the disappearance of Hulu's and the others has something to do with the owner of this presence. Everyone's expression changed. Not a single one of Hulu's, Mafa and the others was weak. They could even fight against the strongest seeded team in the Battle of Holy Glory. But they disappeared in the barren lands without a trace. No matter how they searched, they couldn't find any clues about their disappearance. This made them wonder if they were dead. And now Bot's words had shocked everyone. A man with a pig's nose said, "It's him, I can smell the blood of Huimi, Tyke and Hulu's." Chapter 2359. The pig-nosed man quickly confirmed that this person had killed their companion. Moreover, Hulu's and Marfa's disappearance was related to this uninvited guest. Everyone was more or less filled with murderous intent. Marfa and the others were like their underlings or disciples. They were much weaker than them. But no matter what, no one would be happy even if their dog was beaten. By then, Qin Zhao had already arrived at the courtyard. What everyone saw was a masked man. He looked like a bank robber. After all, few people in the spiritual world wore masks. Most people recognized each other through aura or magical power. Everyone's aura and magical power were different. No matter how a person's face changed, their aura and magical power wouldn't change. There were many ways to change one's appearance, but none could change one's aura and magical power. Thus, it was much more reliable to recognize magical power and aura than to remember one's appearance. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't think that much. What they didn't expect was that the man should at least cover his tracks with this outfit. He didn't walk in like this. Qin Zhao glanced at the people in the living room and opened the floor-to-ceiling windows. Who's the leader of the Hermit Order, Avid Kongson? I am. Avid Kongson didn't plan to hide his identity. He didn't think it was necessary. Who are you? Look at my outfit. It's obvious that I'm trying to fool people. Do you think I'll tell you who I am? It's okay. I'll make you take off your mask later, Avid Kongson said nonchalantly. If you have the ability, you can give it a try. Then what business do you have here? To kill you. Why? I heard that you've kidnapped many kids recently. According to my intelligence, my daughter is also one of your targets. To prevent you from hurting my precious daughter, I've decided to kill you first. But don't you think it's funny? Since you know that my target is your daughter, shouldn't you escape with her? Why are you walking into my trap? Isn't it easier to kill you? Why are you so confident? Since you know that your daughter is my target, you should know who I am, right? Yes. Qin Zhao nodded. Then where does your confidence come from? You're not facing an ordinary person. Where did your confidence come from? Qin Zhao rubbed his chin and seemed to be thinking seriously. After a while he said, It should be the confidence I got from my past opponents. Guild leader, allow me to test his strength, Shifeng said. The man with a pig nose said. Avid Kong nodded. Go. Leave one alive. The pig-nosed man pounced at Qin Zhao. As he did so, his head suddenly turned into a boar's head. Qin Zhao could smell the faint scent of the same species from him. Gluttony bloodline. The boar head opened its mouth and pounced at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao blocked the boar's head with his hand. But at that moment the boar's nose suddenly sniffed. He realized that his magic had been sucked away by the boar's head. His hand was also stuck to the boar's body. Is it because you can't let go? Your magic power is the most delicious thing I've ever swallowed. The boar head chuckled. He really liked Qin Zhao's magic power. Every time he swallowed someone else's magic power, he would have difficulty digesting it and would have adverse reactions. But he felt that Qin Zhao's magic power didn't need to be digested. He could use it directly. Plus, there were no adverse reactions. He'd never encountered magic power that suited him so well. So he started gluttonous. One had to admit that the man's magic power was enormous. It was so enormous that it was terrifying. But the boar head wasn't afraid. His special bloodline allowed him to have 30 times more magic power than normal people. Suddenly, the boar head realized that the man didn't seem to have any intention of resisting. This reaction was completely different from the people he'd devoured in the past. There was no panic, no retreat. The man's eyes just watched him devour the man's magic power calmly. The boar head realized that his magic power had reached 60% saturation. But the man before him hadn't been sucked dry yet. Wasn't this guy's magic power too enormous? According to a normal ratio, the boar head's magic power was equivalent to 18 times that of a normal person's. The boar head suddenly didn't want to devour anymore. He wanted to pull away from Qin Zhao. But Qin Zhao grabbed the boar head's chest. Don't rush. Even if you die, don't starve. More. It was the boar head's first time hearing such a request. More. But when he connected the whole sentence, it made his hair stand on end. Help me, the boar head couldn't get away. He could only ask his companions behind him for help. Bolt grabbed at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao raised his right arm and grabbed Bolt's claw. At the same time he twisted and broke Bolt's arm. At the same time Qin Zhao lifted a leg. Crack. The whipping leg almost broke Bolt's spine. Bolt was sent flying. Whoa, the wild god's power in Bolt didn't kill him so easily. But his injuries were very serious. Everyone felt like their heads were going to explode. Bolt wasn't the strongest among them. But his body and strength were definitely the best. It wasn't just them. Even when compared to all the spiritualists in the entire spirit world, there were few who could rival them. But before this man he couldn't even defeat them? The power of the wild god? This was the second spiritualist Qin Zhao had met who used the wild god. Of course, Qin Zhao's understanding of the power was limited to the introduction he'd heard when he'd met Hulu's last time. You're very strong. You didn't die. Everyone was speechless. Being defeated in one blow and not dying, was this considered powerful? At the same time, it also proved how terrifying the man before them was. The boar head panicked even more. He'd devoured such a large amount of his magic. Not only was he not panicking, but he'd also heavily injured Bolt in one move while dealing with the devouring. Was this guy a monster? Just then a terrifying bolt of electricity swept over. Everyone's hair stood on end. Where's my sister? A woman's palms gathered terrifying electricity and she glared at Qin Zhao. Your sister? Oh, the woman who could also release electricity in the barren plateau. Qin Zhao recalled. Do you want to see her? I can send you there. Qin Zhao lifted his right arm and faced the woman. Chapter 2360. Whoosh. There was an extremely crisp sound of something piercing through the air. The woman's head was pierced by a strong electric current. There was a black spot between her eyebrows and smoke came out of her mouth, nose and ears. Just then an Asian woman suddenly attacked Qin Zhao. The woman was originally empty-handed, but a red tasseled spear suddenly appeared. The red tasseled spear danced ferociously and moved like a dragon. It stabbed directly at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. It was his first time seeing such a weapon with Chinese characteristics. Qin Zhao blocked the spear with his finger and knocked the spearhead away. However, the woman felt the huge force from the spearhead. Although she was already scared, she reacted quickly. She turned around and used the force to counterattack. Another eagle soars the sky swept toward Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao reached out to grab the spearhead. But the red tasseled spear in the woman's hand suddenly disappeared. Qin Zhao was stunned. In the next instant he saw the spear go around his arm and slash toward his face. Hiss! The black cloth on Qin Zhao's face was torn off. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Qin Zhao was also stunned. He touched his face. Everyone thought that the other party was famous. At least with such power he wouldn't be nameless. But seeing Qin Zhao's face, no one recognized him. Sorry, looks like you're all going to die. In that instant, everyone felt as if their hair was about to stand on end. This guy is dangerous. Very dangerous. Qin Zhao's right palm suddenly covered the boar's head. The wild boar head wanted to dodge because at that moment he felt that he was really going to die. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'm a spy. I'm not with him. I'm not from the Hermit Order. I'm from the Scarlet Church. The mouth of gluttony on Qin Zhao's palm was already open, about to devour the boar's head. In that instant Qin Zhao stopped his hand. You're from the Scarlet Church? What evidence do you have? Qin Zhao was a bit hesitant. Did this guy give him the information? The boar had no choice now. If he was a little later, Qin Zhao would kill him directly. If he really died in Qin Zhao's hands, it would be too unjust. The boar hurriedly pulled up his sleeve. Qin Zhao looked at the boar. There was nothing on his wrist. What are you going to show me? Are you messing with me? The boar head used a little bit of magic power, and a red mark appeared on his originally empty wrist. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. The red mark was the Scarlet Church's emblem. This is a dark engraving. It will only appear when I pour magic power into my arm, the boar head said. Qin Zhao temporarily gave up on killing the boar head. I'll let you live for now, but don't think you're safe. After we leave here, I'll verify your identity. As for the others, they all had different expressions on their faces. Perhaps it was because the wild boar had hidden himself too well. So much so that they did not expect the wild boar head to be a spy. But Avid Kang's expression was ugly. After all, his subordinate said that he was a spy in front of him. This feeling made him extremely angry. Suddenly, Qin Zhao felt a huge force coming at him from behind. A group of fat kids sneak attacked Qin Zhao from several meters away. However, his sneak attack only made Qin Zhao stagger a step forward. Qin Zhao turned to look at the boy. The fat boy's face turned pale. That attack just now was his full power. But the effect was actually just making Qin Zhao stagger a step. Qin Zhao raised his right arm. The fat boy suddenly took a deep breath and then roared, "Ha!" In an instant, Qin Zhao's magic power stagnated. He actually lost balance for a moment. It felt like Li Pan's magic forbidden zone. Just as Qin Zhao paused for a moment, the boy opened his mouth again and roared, "Break!" Bang! The boy's roar turned into a huge force that smashed directly into Qin Zhao's face. However, this time Qin Zhao did not even move his feet. He only tilted his face slightly. Qin Zhao touched his face. It's been a long time since someone dared to slap me. Wait, it's a misunderstanding. The boy quickly waved his hand. This time Qin Zhao didn't stop. He punched out. Shocked, the boy roared, "Defend!" 3 shields made of mana appeared around the fat boy's body, hovering around him. However, the 3 magic shields shattered the moment they came into contact with the fist shadows. The boy's body also shattered in an instant. In an instant, the hall was filled with minced meat and blood. Everyone was shocked again. Where did this guy come from? Everyone present was terrifyingly strong. No one dared to say that they would definitely win. But Qin Zhao had already defeated them one after another. He had even killed 4 people. And they were all defeated in a crushing manner. The atmosphere became extremely oppressive. The boarhead's face was also filled with shock. If he had not stopped in time, he would probably have followed in the boy's footsteps. He had been undercover for so many years and knew the boy's strength very well. The boy might not be stronger than him, but if the boy had attacked first, he would definitely have died. But now, the boy had been defeated by Qin Zhao in a few moves. And he had died without a whole corpse. Attack together. Avid Kong ordered. How could he not understand now? The guy in front of him was not here to die at all. He was really here to kill. Qin Zhao's smile was slightly terrifying. Just then, the woman who had been standing at the back suddenly reached out and scattered seeds. Then the seeds suddenly turned into huge man-eating flowers. Seeds? Qin Zhao was dazed for a moment. Was this Morad's plant magic? Ever since Qin Zhao had come into contact with the spiritual world, he had met all kinds of spiritualists. Morad was the only spiritualist he had met who knew plant magic. According to Morad, he was the only one in the world who knew plant magic. But now there was a woman who knew plant magic. Qin Zhao stood still. Before the man-eating flowers could land, the dark magma suddenly turned into a black claw. It passed right in front of the man-eating flowers and instantly tore them to pieces. But the black claw did not stop. It continued moving toward the woman. Seeing that the woman was about to be torn to pieces, the woman with the red-tasseled spear came to her rescue in time. The red-tasseled spear swept past and shattered the black claw. But the next moment, the dark magma gathered again, forming countless black blades that attacked the spear-wielding woman. The spear-wielding woman parried left and right but could not block the countless black blades. The spear-wielding woman was about to die under the black blades. Forced, the spear-wielding woman yelled, "I'm a disciple of Dragon Tiger Mountain's sage sect. Fuck." Qin Zhao could not help but curse. On the other hand, Avid Kongson felt like vomiting blood. Chapter 2361. Qin Zhao immediately changed his direction and attacked the woman who had used plant magic. The woman also yelled, "I'm a spy from the Druid Church. I don't know you." Whether or not Zhang Tianyi and 23rd generation Blood Mary's subordinates were real, Qin Zhao couldn't attack them before figuring out their identities. But he didn't know anyone from the Druid Church. Kill a stranger. So Qin Zhao didn't stop because of the woman's yell. The black blade formed from the dark magma was already very close. The woman didn't understand why the boar head and the spear-wielding woman could live as spies. Her identity as a spy didn't work at all. Thankfully, the spear-wielding woman swung her spear again, shattering the tide-like black blade. "What are you doing? Don't think you can interfere with my actions just because you're old Zhang's disciple. Plus, your identity isn't confirmed yet." Qin Zhao looked at the spear-wielding woman unkindly. He wondered if he should kill the woman as well. But if he killed her, then he might have to kill the Scarlet Church's spies as well in order to silence them. Thinking of this, Qin Zhao looked at the boar head. The boar head panicked. He could feel the murderous intent in Qin Zhao's eyes when he looked at him and the spear-wielding woman again. Qin Zhao had been able to be a spy and stay by Avid Kongson's side for many years. Moreover, in order to not arouse his suspicions, other than being cautious, he also had a meticulous mind and high IQ. He probably felt that the spear-wielding woman's obstruction made Qin Zhao want to kill. And if he really killed the spear-wielding woman, he had to die too in order to silence her. The boar head broke out in a cold sweat. The devil before him wasn't a kind person. Only Avid Kongson wanted to vomit blood. He'd thought that his subordinates were all loyal. But when he turned around, he realized that there were 3 spies among them. And they belonged to different sections. In the past, I didn't know her identity, but now that I know, I can't kill her. The Druid Church and my Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Master sect have sworn an oath of alliance, so in terms of relationship, she and I are fellow disciples. I can't watch my fellow disciple die in front of me and do nothing. Whether her identity is real or fake, Qin Zhao said coldly. I don't even know who you are. At this moment, the man who had been standing behind a Vitkong with flames burning in his hands suddenly extinguished the flames in his hands. Yvette Kongson turned his head to look behind him and saw his adopted son looking at him with a complicated expression. He couldn't help but be shocked. Robert. I raised you myself. Qin Zhao also looked at the man called Robert. His spell looked like a fire spell, but Qin Zhao felt like he had seen it before. Now that he saw Robert extinguish the flames in his hands, he was even more certain. His magic was very similar to Bifla's holy fire magic. Lord President, I'm sorry. I'm a spy from the fire worship sect. Avid Kong felt the world spin. At that moment he felt that everyone was betraying him. Everyone present was his trusted aide, and he had never hidden any of his plans from them. Only now did he realize that half of his trusted aides were spies. This meant that his every move was actually under the control of the sections. He was actually naive enough to think that all of his actions were secretive, and he thought that he was hidden. Looks like I don't have to keep hiding anymore. At this moment the last spy also surfaced. Qin Zhao looked at the man who'd spoken last. He hadn't done anything yet. He'd been watching from the back with his arms crossed. Qin Zhao had noticed him before. He had a strong aura of dark magic on him. But now the dark aura on him gradually retracted. It was replaced by thick and extremely pure holy light magic. Let me guess. You're from the church? Qin Zhao asked the man. Qin Zhao had seen many spiritualists who could use dual magic. However, it was Qin Zhao's first time seeing a spiritualist who could use both holy light and dark magic, which countered each other. Qin Zhao had heard that both were very difficult to cultivate. One had to have the corresponding magic element and extremely high talent. Moreover, holy light and dark magic conflicted with each other. Of course, this also proved the man's talent and ability. Avit's body trembled. You all deserve to die, all of you deserve to die. Qin Zhao actually understood how Avit felt right now. Of course, Qin Zhao's feelings were complicated too. At first he'd only planned to kill one person. It wasn't that he couldn't get over it. In fact, he'd long since gotten over it. He was just unhappy about being ordered around by Zhang Tianyi. That was why he'd come with a mask. He only wanted to kill Avit, the main culprit. As for the others, he'd let Zhang Tianyi take care of them. But because his mask had been picked, he felt the urge to kill again. He'd had the urge to kill again. In the end, he'd only killed one and they all jumped out on their own. Qin Zhao hadn't changed his original intention of calling himself a spy. But there was more sympathy in his eyes when he looked at Avit Kongson. He was too pitiful. He only had 7 subordinates, but 5 of them were spies. Qin Zhao had to admit that this guy had bad taste in picking people. Come, I'll free you. If you die, you won't have so many troubles. Qin Zhao didn't want to kill him now. They were all very complicated. If any information was exposed, a large sect would be in trouble. Plus, Zhang Tianyi knew that he'd come here. Would he be able to silence Zhang Tianyi? It would be easier to kill Avit Kong. Senator Avit's bitter smile suddenly turned into a sinister one. Do you really think you can kill me? All of you will die, all of you. Just then, arms suddenly grew out of Avit Kongson's body. Hundreds of arms grew out, making him look like a caterpillar. The spell. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at Avit. Why was it so similar to Lilith's? Just then, every arm on Avit Kongson's body began to cast magic. The spells cast by each arm were also different. Qin Zhao was even more surprised. This guy's spell was like a weaker version of Lilith's. However, Avit's form still scared the others. After all, releasing hundreds of different spells at the same time was still very shocking. Chapter 2362. Even Lilith's strengthened version couldn't do anything to Qin Zhao. Not to mention the simplified version. But there were some differences between the two. As for what was different, Qin Zhao couldn't tell. Anyway, he just felt that they were different. In Qin Zhao's eyes, it was a weakened version, but to others, it was boundlessly terrifying. What did it mean to release hundreds of spells at the same time? It was like hundreds of spiritualists attacking at the same time. No matter how confident they were, they didn't think that they could fight against hundreds of spiritualists. Even the lowest level spiritualists. Looking at the innumerable spells that were shining with colorful brilliance, Lin Li was stunned. They were like the most dazzling fireworks in the world. Everyone felt an indescribable pressure. They had been with Avit Kongson for so long. Even the shortest time was at least 5 years. Robert and Avit Kongson were like father and son. They didn't know that Avit Kongson had such power. Or rather, he had such unimaginable spells. Qin Zhao lifted his right arm. The mouth of gluttony. Just then, the mouth of gluttony fell off Qin Zhao's arm again and turned into the glutton beast. But this time it wasn't as big as last time. Last time, the glutton beast that Qin Zhao's right arm had turned into was almost the same size as Beelzebub Sophie. Now Qin Zhao's glutton beast was about the size of a small house. Of course, this was also because he had faced Lilith last time. At that time, Qin Zhao had gone all out. He'd used all his enhancements. This time he was facing Avit Kong. Senator. The difference in power between the two was more than 1,000 times. Qin Zhao didn't use any enhancements. The glutton behemoth opened its mouth and sucked all the magic into its mouth. The boarhead's expression changed slightly. Of course, he could feel that the glutton beast had the same bloodline as him. However, the glutton beast had a pure glutton bloodline. The boarhead's bloodline had been diluted countless times. It wasn't just the difference in bloodline. In terms of strength, it was unknown how many times weaker they were. Now he finally understood why Qin Zhao wasn't afraid of his special ability. Because they were the same kind. Plus, Qin Zhao surpassed him in all aspects. He was actually naive enough to use a low-level bloodline to try and defeat a higher-level bloodline. It could be said that if he wasn't a spy, he would definitely be devoured by Qin Zhao in the same way. Not only was the wild boar head shocked, but the others were also in disbelief. They didn't have the bloodline of a wild boar, so they didn't know what this magic-devouring behemoth was. However, it was definitely not an ordinary magical creature. Even dragons could not devour magic. However, this gigantic beast could devour magic endlessly. That was terrifying. Of course, Avid Kong Sin would not give up without a fight. He frantically unleashed his magic. The gluttony behemoth, on the other hand, was endlessly devouring. It would devour as much as Avid Kong Sun released. However, the longer the stalemate, the more terrified Avid Kong became. His magic power was limited. However, this beast was like an endless abyss. He released thousands of spells, but they were not enough to fill the abyss. Actually, Avid Kong didn't know that the glutton behemoth had a limit. However, his strength was not enough to probe the glutton behemoth's limits. Moreover, the glutton behemoth's magic devouring was different from the boar head's. So much magic energy was brewing in the glutton behemoth's mouth, but it was not being absorbed. The energy became larger and larger. When Avid Kong Sin could no longer continue, he stopped releasing magic. The glutton behemoth opened its bloody mouth again. A colorful energy ball appeared in its mouth. When Avid Kong saw the energy ball in the glutton behemoth's mouth, he immediately realized that something was wrong. He turned around and ran. His way of running was also very special. All his arms wriggled on the ground like a caterpillar. Disgusting. Boom. The energy ball accurately hit Avid Kong Senator. The energy ball expanded instantly, but it wasn't too exaggerated. It only maintained a diameter of a few meters. This was the maintenance of high-energy energy. To use a common analogy, it was as stable as the sun. Of course, the energy level of the energy ball couldn't compare to the sun. This constant balance only lasted for less than 10 seconds. When everyone saw that Avid Kong Sin had nothing left, they couldn't help but sigh. They knew Avid Kong Sin's strength, both before and after he changed his body. But now he didn't even have a corpse left. The remaining people, including the crippled bot, all stared at Qin Zhao in silence. Finally, the boar head could not help but say, "Sir, then you what? You want to leave?" Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at them. "Before I know who you are, don't even think about leaving." Everyone was secretly annoyed, but they did not dare to retort. The dark magma had already surrounded them and the glutton behemoth was facing them. If anyone dared to do anything, they wouldn't end up much better than Avid Kong Senator. Moreover, Qin Zhao had already shown his strength to suppress everyone. It wasn't just defeat. It was complete suppression. If they had any chance of winning, they would not accept Qin Zhao's humiliating treatment. "Let's start with you." Qin Zhao looked at Bot. "You're not someone's spy. You should have no objections if I kill you, right?" Of course, who wouldn't have objections? Bot propped himself up with one hand with difficulty and said unhurriedly, "After Hulu's was captured by the Celestial Master contacted me through Hulu's. I'm also a spy of Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master sect, but only the Celestial Master knows about this. If you want to confirm this, you can only ask the Celestial Master." Bot felt that no matter how strong Qin Zhao was, he would not dare to question Zhang Tianyi. Of course, even if he really did question Zhang Tianyi, he would not be afraid. He was still discussing with Zhang Tianyi, but he had not completely agreed to Zhang Tianyi's request. In order to save his life, going with the flow wasn't something unacceptable. Qin Zhao took out his phone. Everyone saw the number of an old bastard appear on the screen. "Hey old Zhang, it's me. I just killed the president of the Hermit Order. These two said that they were spies sent by you. Tell me if that's true. If they're not, I'll kill these two liars while I'm at it." "Qin Zhao, one of them is my daughter." "Don't do anything stupid," Zhang Tianyi exclaimed. "Daughter? Which one?" Qin Zhao pretended to be confused. "I saw a furry one. Are you talking about him? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor." Chapter 2363. Although Qin Zhao was purposely making things difficult for Zhang Tianyi, he had been joking with Zhang Tianyi the whole time. Moreover, he often made fun of his daughter. However, when he remembered that his daughter was still in his hands, he let his daughter go in the end. As for Bot, Zhang Tianyi also gave a positive reply. However, Qin Zhao noticed Bolt's nervous expression before Zhang Tianyi confirmed it. After all, he was a rootless duckweed. No, it should be the meat on the chopping board. On the other hand, Qin Zhao could raise his butcher's knife at any time. This guy killed without batting an eye. Moreover, he and Zhang Tianyi had not come to an agreement before. The main thing was that he wasn't very satisfied with the conditions. If Zhang Tianyi denied it at this time, he would be finished. Fortunately, he still had value. Only then did Zhang Tianyi step forward to protect him. However, in this way, it would be extremely difficult to escape from Zhang Tianyi's hands in the future. Before hanging up the phone, Zhang Tianyi proved it to the druid girl. Although Zhang Tianyi wasn't there, he was able to make a judgment based on Qin Zhao's description. This druid chick was indeed a spy planted by the druid sect around Avid Khan Senator. Then there was Bifla, the 23rd Blood Mary, and Pope John the Elder. They also proved the identities of these spies. Qin Zhao couldn't help but sigh. This Avid Khan was such a failure. Everyone had betrayed him. Except for the woman who had her head smashed by Qin Zhao and used lightning. It seemed that all of his trusted aides were spies. This was simply too tragic. Of course, Qin Zhao wasn't sympathizing with Avid Kong. He was gloating. Dad. Zhang Nan looked at her father. Zhang Tianyi closed the Taoist scripture and gently placed it on the tea table beside him. Sit, Zhang Tianyi said lightly. Zhang Nan sat down obediently on the cattail hassock with his back straight. This was a habit that she had developed since she was young, even though she was using a red tasseled spear. In fact, she was a Taoist nun through and through. He had joined the church when he was 8 years old. She would only call Zhang Tianyi dad when she was alone with him. If they were in the sect, she would also have to call Zhang Tianyi headmaster. Moreover, she did not receive any special care from Zhang Tianyi during her cultivation. His dermic powers were not much higher than his peers. Of course, in her eyes, she was referring to the generation of Zhang Tianyi's disciples. In terms of seniority, those of her generation were all over 80 years old. There were also 1 or 2 eldest senior brothers and eldest senior sisters who were over 100 years old. What did you gain from your training outside the mountain? Zhang Tianyi asked. After hiding in the hermit cultivators for so many years, my Tao heart couldn't calm down, Zhang Nan said. I've seen so many evil deeds, but being in the wolf's den, my will is willing but my strength is insufficient. Before you left the mountain, your father had made it clear. Zhang Tianyi replied, joining the Hermit Cultivators Association doesn't depend on how dangerous that place is, but on the tempering of your heart. Zhang Tianyi's words weren't fake either. If he wasn't completely confident, he wouldn't have sent his own daughter to the Hermit Order as a spy. Even if she accidentally exposed her identity, even if Zhang Tianyi was thousands of miles away, he was confident that he could protect his daughter. The Taoists were particular about doing things without doing anything, and the Tao was natural. Therefore, cultivation was more about cultivating the mind. As long as one's temperament was strong enough and tenacious enough, one's cultivation would be unimpeded. Therefore, the Taoists were more focused on the inner realm than the outer realm. They weren't like Qin Zhao, who increased his cultivation explosively and didn't cultivate his mind at all. Of course, everyone had their own fate. Zhang Nan had been in the sect for close to 20 years, but her innate talent was higher than her comprehension. As Zhang Tianyi's daughter, she couldn't say that she surpassed her father, but her innate talent was definitely not bad. However, due to the limitations of Longhu Mountain's Taoist sect, Zhang Nan had to have a strong state of mind in order for her cultivation to keep up. If her state of mind wasn't there, then no matter how talented she was, she wouldn't be able to improve. In theory, the state of mind was not limited and could be improved infinitely. Could even reach an unimaginable level. However, cultivation was limited by the state of mind. Because of this, Zhang Nan needed to leave the mountain to train. However, there were many things to pay attention to when leaving the mountain. If it was just walking around in the pugilistic world, it wasn't challenging at all for Zhang Nan. Not to mention cultivating her mind. With Zhang Tianyi's name, which pugilistic world would dare to make things difficult for Zhang Nan? Even the most ferocious scoundrel would avoid Zhang Nan if they saw her. Because of this, Zhang Nan was able to sneak into the hidden cultivators sect under Zhang Tianyi's arrangements. Even Zhang Nan becoming Avid Kong Sen's trusted aide was arranged by Zhang Tianyi. Avid Kong Sen thought that he was in control of the hidden cultivators sect, but he didn't know that the hidden cultivators sect had long been corrupted by various forces. And now Avid Kongson had died a horrible death. However, the hidden cultivators sect would still exist, and it would still be under the control of various forces. After a series of internal strife, a new and powerful guild master would appear. This was also the reason why Zhang Tianyi dared to arrange for Zhang Nan to infiltrate the hidden cultivators sect. The so-called guild master of the hidden cultivators sect believed that he had obtained his position through his own strength and intelligence. However, he didn't know that these guild masters were merely pawns to be controlled or even toys. Zhang Nan's experience as a spy in the hidden cultivators sect wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. If it wasn't for Avid Kongsen's own death wish, he might have been able to live on for a few more years. However, he actually reached out to those talented children or spiritual children. This was a taboo. What a joke! What did the spiritual world rely on to prosper? It didn't rely on old guys like them who were about to be abandoned by the times. It relied on the new generation and the talented children. But Avid Kongsen had locked his target on the children. Everyone couldn't stand it anymore. That was why he had to die. No one could tolerate this. As the person involved, Qin Zhao couldn't tolerate it, but so could Zhang Tianyi. Even the spies like Zhang Nan couldn't tolerate it. Therefore, every spy basically passed information to the organization they were in. Therefore, even if Avid Kongsen didn't die, he wouldn't live for more than 3 to 5 days. If attacking ordinary people was the bottom line, then attacking children was a taboo. The bottom line was something that could be constantly tested or crossed by others. However, touching something taboo would result in death. Dad, who's that guy? Did you send him? He's also from Dragon Tiger Mountain? Send him. If he hears this, he might not rest until I, your father, am dead. This guy's too murderous. He's even more murderous than Avid Kong Sr. Don't be fooled by his ruthlessness, but he knows life better than anyone else. He also knows his Tao better than anyone else. Otherwise, how do you think you kids could survive from his hands? It's not like we don't have the power to fight back. If we're forced into a corner, we might be able to fight back. My dear daughter, if he wants to kill you, you won't even have the chance to tell him who you are, let alone fight back. Chapter 2364. Where did that person come from? Zhang Nan asked. How come I've never heard of him? Which sect is he from? Zhang Nan asked. He's overseas, Zhang Tianyi said. But it's sad that you guys were born in the same era as him. Zhang Tianyi sighed. Unless his daughter could reach the Shangqing state, she would barely have some achievements in Qin Zhao's eyes. This was a very real problem. He hadn't reached the end of his lifespan yet. The 23rd Blood Mary had received the primordial stone from Qin Zhao and forcefully extended her life. But no matter how much they extended their lives, they definitely wouldn't be able to outlive Qin Zhao. In the future, there would be almost no one who could compete with Qin Zhao in the spiritual world. Baifla had some hope. If he successfully transferred his body next time, his cultivation would improve and he would be able to keep up with Qin Zhao's. As for the others, they were too far behind. John Sr. wasn't weak, but he relied on external forces. If his church's divine artifacts were taken away, John Sr. would at most be half a step into the Shangqing state. Moreover, John Sr. was old too. He probably wouldn't be able to outlive the 23rd Blood Mary. As for the younger generation, Zhang Tianyi didn't think highly of them. Unless 10 or more Shangqing state experts appeared in the future. Otherwise, Qin Zhao would be the only one. Of course, from the current situation, the next 100 years would be a situation where there were many experts. Qin Zhao was that super expert. After him there would be a few Shangqing state experts. This was the most optimistic estimate. Moreover, as the spiritual qi tide approached, it hadn't completely recovered yet, but the spiritual qi was starting to return. In the next 100 years, it would probably reach its peak. In the era of spiritual qi recovery, the spiritual world would also develop to its limit. There would definitely be more experts then in this era. Of course, the principle of the strong getting stronger also applied in the spiritual world. But there was another possibility. Qin Zhao's cultivation had already reached its limit. Zhang Nan didn't know Qin Zhao. It was her first time seeing him, so she didn't have a deeper impression of him other than his strength. Of course, she didn't think that Qin Zhao was as scary as her father said. Just then there was a knock on the door. Come in. The door isn't locked. A blonde woman with blue eyes walked in. She carried a pile of documents in front of Zhang Tianyi. What's the matter, overseer? Zhang Tianyi asked. The woman in front of him was the former president of the European Supernatural Organization, Overside Lily. But now she was Zhang Tianyi's in-name disciple and secretary. Master, these are the 12 paranormal incidents that happened in Istanbul between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. today. There was at least one casualty in every paranormal incident, and every victim's skull was smashed in with a single blow. The culprit is very powerful. Based on the analysis of a few pieces of information, the culprit should be a speed enhancer. Zhang Nan could not help but frown when she heard Overside Riley's words. Because the first person she thought of was Chen Zhao. As expected, Zhang Tianyi's expression was calm after hearing Overside Lily's words. Yes, I understand. Record these files. Master, don't we need to send someone to investigate? Overside Lily asked, confused. Zhang Tianyi was one of the main people in charge of the Battle of Holy Glory. He was also in charge of security. But so many malicious paranormal incidents had happened today. Even if Zhang Tianyi was not furious, he should at least send someone to find the culprit. But Zhang Tianyi's reaction was too abnormal. The people who died deserve to die, Zhang Tianyi said calmly. Plus, I'm the one who sent people. If they find me in the end, it'll be awkward. Overside Lily did not expect Zhang Tianyi to be the mastermind behind all this. She also did not expect Zhang Tianyi to say it out loud as if no one else was around. Overside Lily was the president of the European branch of the Supernatural Organization. She had done some things in the dark before. She could understand Zhang Tianyi's actions. People who looked righteous on the surface might have some dirty tricks up their sleeves. But Zhang Tianyi did not plan to hide it from Overside Lily at all. Zhang Tianyi and Chen Zhao were the same kind of people. They both had their own bottom lines. Of course, their bottom lines were different. Their actions were also different. Zhang Tianyi did not care if his methods were dirty or not. He only cared about right and wrong. He had sent people to assassinate those people. It was not righteous, but he had a clear conscience. So he spoke honestly. Even if the person before him was not his trusted aide or his daughter, he could still answer honestly. Because he had a clear conscience, he was fearless. Then, do we need to do something to suppress this? Overside Lily asked. We don't need to do something superfluous. Zhang Tianyi glanced at the corpses. Stroking his goatee, he said, but that guy is really efficient. Is it him? Zhang Nan asked. Is it him? Zhang Tianyi nodded. Zhang Nan picked up the information Overside Lily had given her and glanced at it. In this list of the deceased, most of them were famous spiritualists. None of them were kind. In fact, they were extremely evil. However, so many villains were wiped out in just a few hours. Was that guy really that powerful? Master, there's one more thing. You better inform your people. What is it? There's an aristocratic club in Istanbul. Many spiritualists are gathered there. It's likely that the series of assassinations triggered some people's nerves. Many people? Yes, very many. At least a few hundred people, and most of them aren't good people. Most of them aren't good people? Zhang Tianyi rubbed his chin. Seems like the remaining few can't sit still anymore. That's true. The identities of the corpses are too obvious. If there were only one or two, it wouldn't attract much attention. But with so many people, they'll definitely be noticed. Zhang Tianyi nodded. Should we contact that person to cancel the operation? No, that bastard won't die. But we still need to contact some idiots so they don't court death, Zhang Tianyi said. Overside Lily didn't quite understand what Zhang Tianyi meant. What did he mean by contacting idiots? Can you find out the identities of all the people gathered in the aristocratic club? Yes, our people are in there. Our people? Tell them to leave immediately after confirming the identities of the people gathered. Chapter 2365. The Celestial Master sent a message, Wang Hai said. He wants us to identify everyone in the venue. Is that necessary? Luo De looked depressed. The spell Rhoda was most proficient in was resonance theory. This spell was specially used to identify people within a certain range. For example, when two people talked, their conversation would reveal their identity. Telepathy would collect this information and analyze the other party's identity. The more the target talked, the more people they talked to, and the easier it was to expose their identity. There were so many people in the venue and they kept talking to each other. Therefore, it wasn't difficult to collect the identity information of most people. Some people directly called out the other party's name or identity when they talked, and it was easy to get the personal information of such people. There were also some people who didn't talk at all, and it was basically impossible to get the other party's identity. Fortunately, the venue was quite lively and there were only a few people who came and went alone. Do you have enough magic power? Do you want me to transfer some to you? No need, I have enough. Luo De shook his head and said, there are just a few people whose identities are unknown. Who's unknown? Wang Hai asked. Luo De spun the magic brush in his hand and quickly drew faces on the paper. I know this too. I know this person. Wang Hai recognized most of these people who weren't identified by Luo Da's spell. Wang Hai and Luo De usually teamed up to carry out missions. Luo De relied on telepathy, while Wang Hai didn't have any special skills. If he had to say something, it would be social skills. In the spirit world, most spiritualists weren't good at socializing, or they didn't like it. But Wang Hai was different. He could talk to anyone he met. No matter good or evil, there was nothing he couldn't talk to. Take this venue for example. He was the one who got the invitation. And there were more than 300 people in the venue and Wang Hai knew at least 100 of them. And among the dozen people that Luo De couldn't identify with his spell, Wang Hai knew 5 of them. Okay, send this name list to the Celestial Master. The two quickly passed the name list to Zhang Tianyi. Not long after, Zhang Tianyi sent another name list. Wang Hai, the Heavenly Master, wants us to send a message to these people. He wants them to leave this place immediately. Then we'll have to leave as well. What happened? I don't know. Maybe it's dangerous here. There are so many of us here. What danger could there be? Could it be that someone dares to cause trouble here? Wang Hai did not believe it. There aren't many good people here. Look at the people on this list. They're all honest children. I guess something is really going to happen here. Let's not dawdle. Let's finish the good deed and leave quickly. I know this person. I'll go and talk to him. You go and inform the others on the list. Luo De was helpless. He knew that Wang Hai could chat with anyone. Even when he was on a mission, he would take the time to make a few new friends or catch up with old ones. Wang Hai arrived in front of 2 old acquaintances. Hi Judith, Acti, long time no see. Wang Hai walked up to a couple. Easy. Long time no see. Acti stepped forward and gave Wang Hai a warm hug. Judith, won't you hug me? Judith rolled her eyes. Are you here to participate in the Battle of Holy Glory? No, I'm here to work. What about you? We're here to participate in the Battle of Holy Glory, but we've been eliminated, Acti said regretfully. This year's Battle of Holy Glory is really difficult. What about you? How's your work going? Judith and Acti seemed to know who Wang Hai was. I almost forgot about business. You'd better leave here quickly. Something might happen here. Something happened? What could happen? Don't tell me that the lightning hunter really dares to come here. What lightning hunter? Wang Hai asked in confusion. He was in the intelligence field, but he had never heard of a lightning hunter. You still don't know? Since this afternoon, there have been many cases of spiritualists being attacked and dying tragically. The attacker is good at using lightning, has an extremely strong physique and is extremely fast. That's why he's called the lightning hunter. The organizer of this gathering gathered us here to discuss how to deal with the lightning hunter together. Wang Hai frowned. Although he got the invitation, he really didn't know what the theme of this gathering was. Whatever, let's not waste time. I've received orders from the higher-ups to notify some people to leave. You're also on the list, Wang Hai said. Are you serious? Yes, I'm not joking, Wang Hai said. Rhoda has already gone to notify the others. Acti and Judith looked at each other and nodded silently. The 3 were about to leave when someone appeared on the podium. Everyone, thank you for coming. I believe many of you know me. Of course, if you don't, I'd be happy to reintroduce myself. I'm Inman Teriko, the leader of the Dark Red Edge, Inman Teriko said in a loud voice. Is he the leader of the Dark Red Edge? Do you know him? Wang Hai asked. I don't know him, but this guy isn't an ordinary spiritualist. The Dark Red Edge isn't a sect that strives to improve itself either. Instead, it's an organization that specializes in stealing other people's pets or hunting and selling rare magical creatures. The most famous thing about this guy is that he sold 2 young dragons, Akedi said. I wouldn't have come if I knew he was the one who held the gathering, Judith said. However, his strength is quite outstanding. It is said that he defeated 2 dragon whelps with his own strength and enslaved them. At this moment, Inman said, I believe many of you already know that I've gathered you here because someone is hunting down the spiritualists in Istanbul. So far, more than 20 people have died. This person is very powerful. I'm afraid that the Dark Red Age and I won't be able to defeat this lightning hunter even if we work together. So I beg you to stay. If we work together, we will definitely be able to defeat or even kill this lightning hunter. I heard that all the people that the lightning hunter killed were experts that could intimidate a region. Can we really defeat him? But we have the advantage in numbers. Even if one of us can't defeat him, we'll go with 2. If 2 can't defeat him, we'll go with 4. I don't believe that the lightning hunter can escape. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2366. Inman looked at the crowd who had been encouraged and could not help but show a smug expression. Of course, his motive was not as honorable as what he said. Because he found that most of the people who died today were spiritualists who wandered in the shadows. They were also commonly known as the unclean or the fallen. They all had one thing in common, which was that during the War of the Holy Glory, they had more or less committed some unknown crimes in Istanbul. Because they were all the same kind of people, they were quite familiar with each other. Sometimes they would even help each other out a little. So Inman roughly knew what they had done. He himself was no exception. On the surface, the Dark Red Edge was a righteous force. In fact, the Dark Red Edge was no less sinful than the other fallen forces. Now that those people were dead, Inman and his kind were very nervous. They were worried that misfortune would befall them soon. Of course, there were also many people who were worried that misfortune would befall them. Most of the people in this hall were not good people. They had more or less done things sneakily. Only a few people did not know what was going on and really thought that this was a gathering to discuss how to catch the lightning hunter. Most of them were simple-minded and did not notice the common characteristics of the dead people. They really thought that the so-called lightning hunter was a butcher who killed without batting an eye. Of course, most of them were smart people. After all, fools could not be bad people. Wang Hai listened to Inman bewitching words from below. He was an intelligence officer, so he knew very well what kind of person Inman was. Of course, he would not really believe Inman words. But many people believed that there was no need to be afraid of the lightning hunter with so many people gathered here. Humans were social animals. The more people there were, the safer they felt. At least with Inman encouragement, everyone seemed to think that a mere lightning hunter was not that scary. As long as the lightning hunter dared to show up here, they would each cast a spell and turn the lightning hunter into a sieve. Nothing that guy says can be trusted. Let's get out of here, Judith said. It was obvious that Judith hated Inman very much. Wang Hai even felt that Judith didn't just reject Inman Judith seemed to hate Manin Hey, isn't that Judith? Inman who was standing on the podium, noticed Judith in the crowd. Let's go. Judith's face darkened as she turned around to leave. At this time, Inman stepped forward and blocked their way. Judith, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Why are you leaving as soon as we meet? Inman gently lifted Judith's hair and sniffed it. What an intoxicating smell. Let go of me. Akati shouted and slapped Inman hand away. Judith was his girlfriend and the current one was here. Inman the ex, was actually flirting with his girlfriend as if no one else was around. No man could tolerate this kind of thing. Inman smiled frivolously and looked down at Aktai. Is this your current boyfriend? He looks so weak. Judith, it seems that after we broke up your eyesight is getting worse. What did you say? You bastard. Aktai flew into a rage. If Judith hadn't stopped him, he would probably have had a full-on fight. Judith hugged Aktai tightly. Calm down, Aktai. They're all his people. Go. Wang Hai also grabbed Aktai's arm. If you want to take revenge, you can do it anytime. There's no hurry. Although Aktai was still furious, he managed to stay rational. In the end, he suppressed his anger and left. Looking at their backs, Inman whispered to his men, Go to the garage and stop them. Yes, President. Let's get out of here quickly. Trico is not a good person. Judith knew Inman very well. The three arrived at the garage and hurriedly found their cars. Just then a car stopped in the parking space next to them. The three couldn't help but stop because they saw that the person in the car was wearing a mask. The man in the mask also noticed the three people in the car next to them. The man in the mask picked up a list and looked at it. It was not the target on the list. The three were all dumbfounded. Who was this guy? A spiritualist? Why did he look more like a bank robber? The man in the mask was of course Qin Zhao. Because of his previous experience, Qin Zhao changed his face scarf and wore a hood instead. This way he wouldn't have to pull it off during the fight. Qin Zhao didn't care about the three's gazes. He got out of the car as if there was no one else around. Just then more than 20 people rushed out from the various entrances. Is this a trap? Qin Zhao muttered to himself. However, when he saw the people surrounding him, he still took out the list and looked at it again. Perfect, one of them is a target. Qin Zhao looked at a bearded man. You're Lion King Goulet? Qin Zhao asked. Goulet looked at Qin Zhao. Who are you? Are you their accomplice? Them. Qin Zhao looked back at Wang Hai, Aktai and Judith. I don't know them. I don't care if you know them or not. Since you're here, don't think about leaving. Are you going to surrender or do I have to tie you up myself? Tie me up? Why me? The president told me to do it. Qin Zhao picked up the list and looked at it again. President? Your president is the head of poachers called Inman Tricot, right? Perfect, I need him for something too. You know the president. No, but I need him for something, Qin Zhao said. Who do you think you are? You can see whoever you want. Plus your background is unknown. If you want to see the president, tie yourself up first. Sure, one of you come over and help me tie myself up. Qin Zhao stretched out his wrists, showing his sincerity. For a moment, Goulet was confused too. Did this guy really need the president for something? Aktai, Judith and Wang Hai were also confused. They weren't surprised by Goulet's intentions. They were just confused by Qin Zhao. No matter how much they racked their brains, they couldn't figure out what this guy was here for. Tie himself up to prove his innocence. Chapter 2367. Wang Hai, Akti and Judith tried to resist. But their strength could only be described as barely passable. Goulet didn't even move. In fact, only 4 or 5 of the dozen people he'd brought did. In no time at all, the 3 of them were tied up tightly. Qin Zhao's hands were already tied up. He looked back at the 3. So pitiful. Hearing Qin Zhao's gloating tone, the 3 of them were furious. You're not much better than us. I did it willingly. The 3 rolled their eyes. Just then one of Goulet's subordinates walked over and tried to pull off Qin Zhao's mask. Don't, Qin Zhao said, dodging the man's hand. This is my style. The man hesitated and looked back at Goulet. Send them to the president. He'll decide. Then the 3 of them, the president asked for them. Send them to him too, Goulet said. Goulet said, search their bodies. No matter what it is, don't let them carry it on them. Then the 4 were sent to a spacious and luxurious office. Qin Zhao sat down on the sofa. The 3 looked at Qin Zhao. This guy was really friendly. He didn't treat them like outsiders at all. Aren't you going to sit? This sofa is pretty comfortable. It's made of leopard skin, Judith said. It's that guy's favorite collection. Really? No wonder it's so comfortable. Inman Teriko isn't a good person. Me neither, Qin Zhao replied. As for Inman Teriko's subordinates, they didn't care. They also didn't care about Qin Zhao's unbridled attitude. In their eyes, the more Qin Zhao didn't care, the worse he'd die later. Just then Inman Teriko and Goulet pushed open the door and entered. When they saw Qin Zhao sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, they couldn't help but be stunned. Inman Teriko squinted at Qin Zhao. You're Inman Teriko? You know the answer. Inman Teriko snorted. You better tell me why you're here. Otherwise I won't let this go. I don't care what your attitude is. I'm here to kill anyway. Qin Zhao shrugged. You and your subordinate Goulet are both on my list. Inman Teriko opened his eyes abruptly, but he wasn't too surprised. Just now, Goulet had already found the name list on his body. When Inman Teriko saw the name on the list and the name that was crossed off, he was sure that the masked man was the lightning hunter they were looking for. So they played along and brought Qin Zhao to this room. At this moment, a large number of spiritualists were stationed outside the room. As soon as Inman Teriko gave the order, the spiritualists would swarm in at once. List? Are you talking about this list? Inman sneered as he took out the list. Qin Zhao glanced at Inman Tiriko. Looks like you already know who I am and why I'm here. After all, no one would brazenly hide the name list on their body. I didn't expect to capture the Lightning Hunter so easily. Lightning Hunter? Are you talking about me? Qin Zhao glanced at Inman Tiriko and Goulet. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but if I wasn't willing to be bound, do you really think you can capture me? But you still fell into my hands, Inman Tiriko said proudly. Fell into your hands? Aren't you overestimating yourself or overestimating the rope that binds my hands? Well, you can try. Maybe you can break the rope even if you break your hands. Magic rope. Qin Zhao tested it and found that the rope was indeed very tough. However, the so-called toughness seemed to only apply to ordinary people. It's indeed tough, but it's not enough. Bang. Qin Zhao exerted a bit of strength and the ropes binding his hands snapped. Inman Tiriko and Goulet immediately took a step back. Wang Hai, Akti and Judith stared at Qin Zhao in shock. This guy was the Lightning Hunter. How could he be a Lightning Hunter? Was there a mistake? I've indeed underestimated you. Inman Tiriko sneered. But you don't think that everything will be fine after breaking free from the magic rope, do you? What other trump cards do you have? Or are those guys lying in ambush outside your trump cards? Not enough. Not enough. I still have a long way to go. Exposing an assassin in front of so many people already means that you've failed. Do you think you still have a chance to turn the tables? Qin Zhao raised his head and stared at Inman Tiriko in shock. You seem to be mistaken. I accepted the mission to kill the people on the list, but I'm not an assassin. At least I'm not a professional. Qin Zhao stood up from the sofa. As for accepting this mission, it's partly because I owe you a favor but mostly because I'm curious. I want to see how an assassin kills. Curiosity kills. I'll say the same thing back to you. Qin Zhao raised his right arm and pointed 2 fingers at Inman Tiriko. Instantly, 1,000,000 volts of electricity shot out from his fingers and shot toward Inman Tiriko. But Inman Tiriko took out a magic staff. The 1,000,000-volt electricity was blocked by the staff. The 1,000,000 volts of electricity also disappeared in an instant. Inman Tiriko held his staff and scathed. This staff is called Thunder's Fury. It can control the power of lightning in the world. Inman Tiriko looked at Qin Zhao proudly. Why do you think I'm standing before you so confidently? It's because I know that you're a speed enhancer and proficient in lightning. You're strong, but as long as I have this staff, your advantage will be gone. In Inman Tiriko's opinion, since Qin Zhao's abilities were countered by the staff, he didn't have to be afraid of Qin Zhao anymore. Looking at the people who had died earlier, most of them were stronger than Inman Tiriko. However, Inman Tiriko realized that most of them had been killed by lightning directly in the head. As long as he had something or someone that could counter lightning, he would be able to win. Is that so? Does this staff have a limit? Qin Zhao asked, intrigued. Ha! Inman Tiriko suddenly waved the staff and pointed at Qin Zhao. A bolt of lightning shot toward Qin Zhao. Boom! The lightning exploded on Qin Zhao's body, but Qin Zhao stood where he was, not moving at all. Inman Tiriko couldn't help but frown. Not bad, but you want to use my attack against me? Aren't you being a little too whimsical? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2368. Inman Tiriko was surprised by Qin Zhao's strength. But he still believed that he was on the winning side. Everything Qin Zhao did was just a futile struggle. But he also felt that he was too close to Qin Zhao. It was too dangerous. Qin Zhao was fighting a spiritualist who specialized in speed. It was a taboo to get too close. Inman Tiriko took a step back, the corners of his mouth curling upwards. Suddenly, 4 glass walls fell around Qin Zhao, trapping him inside. Aren't you being too naive? Qin Zhao looked at Inman Tiriko in surprise. Do you really think this thing can trap me? As soon as Qin Zhao finished speaking, a large amount of gas suddenly sprayed out from the 4 corners of the glass wall. Oh no! It's mana paralysis, cough cough. Wang Hai, Akti and Judith felt very uncomfortable. They were also trapped in the glass wall. This kind of poisonous gas was very dangerous for spiritualists. If they accidentally breathed in this gas, their bodies would be seriously malfunctioning once they circulated their mana. In order to deal with the lightning hunter in front of him, Inman Tiriko had put in a lot of effort and made ample preparations. Instantly, the entire glass wall was filled with smoke. Inman Tiriko looked very pleased. It seemed that victory was already in his grasp. But the next moment the poisonous gas in the glass wall disappeared at an extremely fast speed. Qin Zhao's vision quickly returned to the glass wall. Inman Teriko stared at the glass in astonishment. Wang Hai, Akdi and Judith were either lying down or half kneeling. The three of them were obviously affected by the mana paralysis gas. But the lightning hunter was still standing in the same spot. Qin Zhao took a deep breath and then burped. Tastes good. A smile appeared on Qin Zhao's face. Outside the glass wall, Qin Zhao's expression changed instantly. Game over. Qin Zhao suddenly raised his right arm and smashed it heavily on the glass wall. Boom. The ground shook violently, but the glass wall was undamaged. Such a hard glass wall. Which company made it? Inman Triko couldn't help but laugh. This is magic glass that contains barrier magic and is specially made. Before Inman Triko could finish, Qin Zhao raised his arm and punched again. Bang! The earth shook and the mountains shook. The ceiling and the ground connected to the glass dome cracked. Inman Teriko stared at Qin Zhao in shock. Panicking, he said to Goulet, "Call everyone in." When the spiritualists outside rushed in, Qin Zhao had already thrown his third punch. The glass shield shattered instantly and Inman Teriko stepped back in fear. While smoking, Goulet suddenly felt a terrifying pressure surging towards him. Goulet wanted to retreat, but a hand reached out from the smoke and grabbed Goulet's wrist. Ah! With a blood-curdling scream, Goulet's arm was broken. At the same time, Qin Zhao snatched the name list from his hands. Qin Zhao couldn't help but frown. The list was damaged and blurred by Goulet's blood sacrifice. He's the lightning hunter. Go kill him. Goulet yelled hysterically. Everyone looked at Qin Zhao. Just then someone attacked Qin Zhao out of nowhere. Qin Zhao was looking at the list at the moment. He casually attacked the person who had ambushed him. A 1,000,000-volt electric current penetrated the spiritualist's head. Old Generation Ritter. Qin Zhao read out a name and found his target in the crowd. Then he read, Wild Sect Raoul Tony Old God Shoal. Qin Zhao read out the names one by one. And this Mary. Which faction is she from? Just then Wang Hai said from the ground, Sir, I can help you identify them, but you have to guarantee our safety. Wang Hai had no choice. They were in the center of the conflict. The three of them had been poisoned again. They couldn't even stand up, let alone protect themselves. Once a full-scale conflict broke out, they would be the first to bear the brunt. Thus he had to find protection. Of course. No problem. Qin Zhao agreed readily and handed the list to Wang Hai. Wang Hai looked at the names on the list. Mary Duope from the Nile Goddess sect. That's the woman. Dunazan from the Thai Deathly Silence sect. That's the one. This is too much. Inman Teriko yelled. Let's go together. If this continued, these people would definitely be divided. Those not on the list would definitely not be willing to attack. Instantly, a dozen spiritualists attacked Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao also threw a dozen punches. Thud, thud, thud. The dozen spiritualists were instantly knocked down. Qin Zhao didn't kill them, but the spiritualists were all strong and weak, so their injuries varied. There are 12 in total, Wang Hai said. 9 are here. Those whose names are called stay. The rest can scram. Everyone at the scene looked at Qin Zhao with fear. However, more people were dissatisfied with his arrogant and disdainful attitude. There's so many of us. Why should we be afraid of him? Are we just going to watch him kill our companions? One had to admit that Inman Teriko wasn't strong, but he was extremely good at bewitching people. Those who'd been wavering and retreating firmed their resolve again. There were so many of them and Qin Zhao was just one person. What was there to be afraid of? Looks like most people aren't afraid of death. Qin Zhao's gaze swept across everyone present. Wang Hai, Akdi and Judith became even more nervous. After all, they weren't the people involved. They'd even wanted to leave. In the end, they were sucked into the vortex by accident. No matter what choice they made now, they wouldn't have a good ending. As for following Qin Zhao didn't seem to have any chance of winning. He might be very strong, but he was just one person. There were 300 to 400 spiritualists present. It was impossible for them to fail. Kid, you're the one who's going to die, an old man called out. He was also on the list, so he was especially proactive. I'll control him. You guys are in charge of pouring magic on him, a muscular man called out. Qin Zhao looked at the man. Judging from his build, he should be an enhancer. An enhancer to control him? Qin Zhao was curious. The burly man shouted, "Unquenchable hatred." A wave of magic enveloped Qin Zhao. Instantly, Qin Zhao felt that the man before him was very annoying. Very, very annoying. He hated and disliked him for no reason. Chapter 2369. Kill him. Kill him. Even though Qin Zhao realized that there was a problem, he couldn't help it. However, he still couldn't help but attack the strong man. At the same time, the others took the chance to attack Qin Zhao. The burly man was very confident. He was an enhancer and he was best at taking a beating. No one could beat him in 10 minutes. 10 minutes was enough for all the spiritualists in the surroundings to kill this scoundrel who was hiding in front of them. Just then Qin Zhao revealed a fierce look. In an instant he appeared in front of the muscular man. The muscular man's body immediately turned into a metal statue. Bang! The burly man felt a pain in his chest and looked down. Qin Zhao's fist had already penetrated his chest. The metal body couldn't block Qin Zhao's punch either. Boom boom boom, just then countless spells landed on him. Qin Zhao was swallowed by countless spells. Suddenly, a figure flew out from the wave of magic. Everyone thought that Qin Zhao was trying to escape, but upon closer inspection, they realized that it was the burly man's corpse. At this moment, a figure moved as fast as lightning. In an instant, a spiritualist's neck was broken. After Qin Zhao charged into the crowd, he was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. "Don't panic. Don't panic," Immerse yelled. But his command had no effect. It was as messy as it should be. In just a few minutes, more than 20 spiritualists had died. The others were even more afraid of Qin Zhao. Although they had the advantage in numbers. However, their advantage in numbers did not seem to have the desired effect. Run. Immerse saw that he couldn't hold the situation any longer. Therefore he planned to make the scene even more chaotic. Since he couldn't get everyone to work together, he would make everyone lose their will to fight. He didn't believe that Qin Zhao could stop everyone. Immerse's words made the situation even more chaotic. Some people still wanted to continue fighting him, but more people fled in panic. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized that a black substance was spreading outside the window. The black substance was covering the outer walls of the venue. The crowd gasped in horror. They suddenly realized that there was no way out. The entire venue was completely covered by the black substance. Immerse's expression changed drastically again. "He won't give us a way out, so we can only fight him." One had to admit that Immerse knew how to make use of the situation. Seeing that their escape route was gone, their fighting spirit immediately rose again. Moreover, when people are in a desperate situation, they can always burst forth with even greater strength. Freeze! A spiritualist waved his arms and dozens of light swords shot out in the air. The light swords pierced through Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao was shocked by the sword's power and penetrating power. His defense actually couldn't block this light sword. The next moment, Qin Zhao realized that the light swords weren't lethal at all. But when the light swords penetrated his body, they formed a wave of coldness that seeped into his body and spread. It actually showed signs of sealing his celestial power. "Hurry up, attack him while he's locked down by me." However, this seal did not last long. Qin Zhao's immortal power suddenly activated, shattering dozens of light swords at the same time. The spiritualist spat out a mouthful of blood. It was too fast. His ultimate move could only trap this guy for a few seconds. In the past he'd used this move almost every time. Just then the ground suddenly split open and a huge hand grabbed Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao pushed with his arms and the hand disintegrated immediately. Wang Hai, Akti and Judith were all dumbfounded. There were 300 to 400 spiritualists present, but they couldn't do anything to this guy. Spiritualists died under Qin Zhao's fists one after another. As long as Qin Zhao got close to them, there was almost no chance of survival. Calling it a battlefield was no longer enough to describe the tragedy in the hall. This was simply an azure field. No matter how vicious and arrogant they had been in the past, they were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Now they were just lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The spells landed on Qin Zhao, but they didn't cause any damage. In fact, most spells couldn't even get within 3 feet of Qin Zhao. This was an extremely hopeless situation. The spells they were so proud of had no effect at all. On the other hand, Every attack from Qin Zhao could take away a person's life. No one understood where this guy had come from. He was a demon that had crawled out of hell. No, he was even scarier than a demon from hell. There were a few spiritualists with demonic spells at the scene. They had even used forbidden summoning to summon a terrifying demon. But Qin Zhao was teaching them how to tear a demon apart. Qin Zhao used extreme terror to dominate everyone. Inman-Teriko's heart grew heavier and heavier. Hundreds of people he'd gathered had died. But this person didn't tire. He was like a perpetual motion machine. He killed tirelessly. He suddenly realized how stupid he'd been. He'd received information about the people who'd died earlier and thought that he'd taken them seriously enough. But he still had a sliver of hope. He thought that he could deal with them. He didn't think about running away or hiding. Now he finally came to his senses. But it was all too late. Qin Zhao wasn't a hunter at all. He was a butcher. He wasn't facing a group of prey but a group of lambs. Goulet was right in front of him. He'd torn it apart. It was also at this moment that he realized that when a person's power reached a certain level, all schemes would seem so stupid. Finally, no one attacked Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao walked up to Inman-Teriko. Inman-Teriko felt a chill down his spine. Even though Qin Zhao was wearing a mask, Inman-Teriko could feel that the man before him was smiling. There was also a mocking look in his eyes as if all the killing was to prove his stupidity. Qin Zhao lifted his blood-dripping hand. Suddenly, Inman-Teriko's body shook and he turned into a huge dragon. Qin Zhao arched an eyebrow. Mixed blood? No, this guy only had the appearance of a huge dragon. This was just a transformation spell. He didn't turn into a real dragon. Still, Inman-Teriko's dragon transformation gave everyone confidence and courage. They seemed to think that Inman-Teriko could counterattack. After all, no matter how strong the lightning hunter was, he couldn't be stronger than a dragon. One had to admit that Inman-Teriko's dragon transformation was indeed shocking. Although he wasn't a real dragon, the transformed Inman-Teriko had improved his abilities in all aspects. He had strength, speed, and even dragon breath. Chapter 2370. Wang Hai, Acti and Judith sucked in a cold breath. Inman-Teriko had arrived with the aura of a king. He seemed to be the strongest factor that could turn the situation around. This made everyone at the scene wild with joy. Even the butcher didn't seem so scary anymore. We won. Great. I didn't expect Mr. Inman to have such a trump card. So what if that lightning hunter is strong? Can he be stronger than a dragon? Compared to the spiritualists on Inman-Teriko's side, Wang Hai, Acti and Judith looked gloomy. In the current situation they were clearly on Qin Zhao's side. If Qin Zhao lost, they could imagine what would happen to them. They wouldn't even be appeased if they didn't kill them. Moreover, they were worried that Qin Zhao wouldn't be able to fight after such an intense battle. Although Qin Zhao had killed many people, he was covered in blood at the moment. He did look miserable. They didn't know how much of his blood was Qin Zhao's and how much was his. Inman-Teriko's huge claw slammed heavily on the ground, and the whole hall shook violently from the impact. He didn't use his trump card at the beginning because his transformation spell couldn't last long. If he used it at the beginning, Qin Zhao might run away. As long as Qin Zhao survived the transformation period, he would be at his weakest. That was why Inman-Teriko chose to use the transformation spell at the most appropriate time. By now, Qin Zhao must have been greatly weakened. And he was still in his peak state. Everyone felt a violent shock, but it also made them even happier and more excited. The stronger Inman-Teriko was, the happier they were. Mr. Inman, kill him. Let him experience the feeling of despair. Qin Zhao raised his head silently and looked at Inman-Teriko. Inman-Teriko wanted to say a few more harsh words. But when he met Qin Zhao's eyes, his heart skipped a beat. In that instant, Inman-Teriko felt an indescribable fear. A cold glint flashed across Qin Zhao's eyes. He threw a punch at Inman-Teriko's huge body. Bang! Blood and flesh flew everywhere. Everyone's excited cheers came to an abrupt stop. Everyone's voice was stuck in their throats. Not a single sound could be heard. Everything happened too suddenly. It was so sudden that no one could accept it. Only half of Inman-Teriko's body was left and he collapsed to the ground. Wang Hai, Acti and Judith's eyes almost popped out. Isn't this too exaggerated? It was completely different from what they had imagined. One strike, just one strike. Everything returned to peace. At this moment, everyone felt a suffocating pressure. That silent fear lingered in everyone's heart. Could an enhancement-type spiritualist really be this terrifying? In the spirit world, it wasn't that there weren't any powerful enhancement-type spiritualists, but top-notch enhancement-type spiritualists were extremely rare. This was because ordinary spiritualists paid more attention to their own mana. Spiritualists not only needed a large amount of mana, but they also needed to constantly strengthen their physique. However, there was a limit to the human body. Therefore, enhancer spiritualists were basically the kind of people who couldn't make it. Even if there were a few outstanding ones, their strength was actually quite limited. Currently, the enhancement type in the spirit world was in a situation where there were experts but no strong ones. But today they had witnessed a terrifying enhancement type with their own eyes. If killing a dragon with one strike wasn't considered strong, then they didn't know what standard a strong person should use. Could flesh and blood really reach such a terrifying level? At any time, being able to defeat a dragon was something to be proud of. However, at this moment, everyone felt that this person seemed to have done something insignificant. He seemed to be used to it. Slaying a dragon seemed to be a very normal thing. Qin Zhao turned around and looked at Wang Hai. Wang Hai's heart skipped a beat. Even though they weren't enemies right now, being stared at by those eyes still made Wang Hai feel uneasy. How many more? Qin Zhao asked. Wang Hai shuddered and turned to look at the crowd. There were many people, but they were all squeezed into a group. Everyone shrank their heads, not daring to meet Wang Hai's gaze. They knew very well that if Wang Hai pointed out their names, there was no chance of survival. No more. Those on the list and in this venue are all dead. Fine. Qin Zhao shrugged and glanced at the crowd. Everyone lowered their heads, afraid to make eye contact with Qin Zhao. You're lucky. I wanted to kill a few more people. Just then, the dark lava covering the outer walls of the venue gradually retreated. Under the bright moonlight, there was a trace of scarlet. But just then everyone's gazes toward Qin Zhao changed. Could it be that his magic power has been used up? It's very possible. Maybe that strike just now was his last bit of power. His voice isn't as loud as before. The spiritualists whispered among themselves. Qin Zhao was somewhat confused. These people had been afraid of him just a moment ago. Why did this suddenly happen? Qin Zhao heard their whispers. Now the spiritualists no longer looked at Qin Zhao with fear in their eyes. There was a trace of eagerness in their eyes. There was also a trace of red. Qin Zhao furrowed his brows. Some mysterious power was driving them. It suppressed their fear to the lowest level and magnified their emotions at the same time. Finally, someone stood up and pointed at Qin Zhao, shouting, "You stop." Qin Zhao stopped and looked at the spiritualists. He realized that not all of the 200 or so spiritualists had been bewitched. However, there seemed to be only a few who were rational. What? Do you still want to fight? Do you want to leave just like that? You killed so many people. Shouldn't you give us an explanation? Explanation? To Qin Zhao walked toward the person. I think you're at the end of your rope. Most of us are still in our best condition. We're not afraid of you anymore. Now, Qin Zhao was completely sure that these people were being manipulated by someone. He didn't know if they'd lost their fear or their ability to think normally. If they were normal people, they definitely wouldn't cause trouble for Qin Zhao now. They had no reason to continue fighting. However, they provoked Qin Zhao at the most inappropriate time. Chapter 2371. A few spiritualists didn't understand why these people who'd been so afraid of Qin Zhao just a moment ago were suddenly so brave. These people's reactions were too abnormal. It was like they'd taken the wrong medicine. But they were very excited. The fear from before was like an act. It wasn't just a few people either. Most people reacted this way. When everyone looked at Qin Zhao, their eyes flashed with the urge to try. The few spiritualists who hadn't been bewitched couldn't help but wonder if this killer was really exhausted. However, when they saw the scene of blood flowing like a river and the gigantic dragon corpse, they immediately sobered up. They couldn't offend that guy. They really couldn't. What a joke. He wasn't really exhausted right now. Even if they were really exhausted, could a flock of sheep do anything to a lion? The few spiritualists who were still rational and clear-headed immediately realized. There was something unusual about these abnormal people. This wasn't a normal method. Could make hundreds of spiritualists lose their minds at the same time. They were also fearlessly provoking and attacking a terrifying guy. This method was simply unimaginable. Bewitchment spells were more commonly known as enhanced hypnosis. Mind spells were also mental spells. Mental spells weren't omnipotent either, because people have a sense of self-safety. For example, controlling an ordinary person and making them move and speak normally was the most basic operation. It would be difficult to make the person lie or deceive someone close to him. It would be very difficult to make the person take out his bank card and password. The human subconscious would reject such requests. Simply put, the more ridiculous the request, the more difficult it would be. It was almost impossible to make someone commit suicide. But now there were more than 200 spiritualists here. They were doing the same thing as committing suicide. This caused a few spiritualists to feel a chill down their spines. They attacked Qinzhao. Their blood-red eyes showed that they were behaving abnormally at this moment. However, Qinzhao was never someone who would reason with others, especially when the other party took the initiative to attack him. Qinzhao used his clones and 36 clones appeared. Each clone had the same power as the original body. Wang Hai, Judith and Arkti widened their eyes. Was this guy really an enhanced spiritualist? This was clearly a cloning spell. However, they soon discovered how terrifying these clones were. His strength was on par with his main body. How long would it take for the battle of over 200 spiritualists to settle down? Qinzhao gave them the answer. Just 1 minute. The atmosphere in the hall became even more intense. Within a minute, more than 200 spiritualists were killed. There were only a few conscious spiritualists. Their hands and feet were cold and they stood where they were. The spiritualist who had been brimming with fighting spirit a moment ago had now become a cold corpse. Only now did they realize that no matter how intense the battle had been, Qinzhao hadn't used his true power. The so-called exhaustion was just a conjecture on their side. The 36 clones retracted, but the smell of blood on Qinzhao's body was even thicker. When Qinzhao's gaze landed on the remaining people, they were already trembling in fear. They couldn't stop at all. Of course, they wouldn't be like those crazy spiritualists who naively thought that they had a chance of winning. He wouldn't be so naive as to think that Qinzhao was exhausted. The person in front of him couldn't be judged by common sense. Don't you feel anything special? Like you want to kill me? Try to turn a bicycle into a motorcycle? Everyone's faces darkened. Try what? What's there to try with you? None of the people who were still alive had a problem with their brains. They were all smart people. It was still a question whether the person before them had even used 30% of his strength. Just then Qinzhao took off his mask. Everyone covered their eyes at the same time and lowered their heads. No one dared to look at Qinzhao's face. They were afraid of death. Even Wang Hai, Judith and Arkti did the same. Qinzhao had been wearing a mask the entire time. He clearly didn't want to expose his identity. When he took off his mask in front of everyone, it was probably the time to kill everyone present. The wet and bloody mask fell to the ground. But Qinzhao's gaze wasn't on the survivors. Instead, he looked at an inconspicuous corner. Come out. There's no point in hiding anymore. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. They could vaguely guess who Qinzhao was talking to. Qinzhao's words were directed at whoever had sent those spiritualists to their deaths. The person hiding in the shadows and the person who'd massacred the entire place were both unbelievably powerful. Now that the two were about to meet, who was stronger? They couldn't help but be curious. Some were even looking forward to it. However, when the person hiding in the shadows walked out, everyone's jaws dropped, their faces filled with astonishment. It wasn't anyone else but Zhang Tianyi. Qinzhao looked at Zhang Tianyi and rubbed his chin. Let me guess what you're going to say next. Your mission is over, but you know too much. Don't worry. I'll take good care of your daughter. Zhang Tianyi's face twitched. You're too dramatic. Why did you do that? Qinzhao stopped joking and suddenly became serious. None of the dead are good people. Is there any difference between killing one bad person and 100 bad people for you? What about them? Don't tell me they're immune to your spells. They're good people, Zhang Tianyi said seriously. They're just stupid. I can't bear for them to die in your hands. Wang Hai was from Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Masters sect. Of course he knew what Zhang Tianyi meant. This was a trap. Those who would foolishly come here were either vicious villains or fools with water in their heads. For example, Judith and Akti beside him. When they'd left, Wang Hai had been worried that something would happen to them if they stayed here. That was why he'd actively looked for them and reminded them to leave. In the end he was still one step too late. However, he didn't know if they were lucky or unlucky to be involved in this terrifying massacre. I'm tired, Qin Zhao said. I lost the list too. I don't care about the rest. Fine. Zhang Tianyi also knew that he'd used Qin Zhao to kill so many people this time. Most of them weren't on the list too. He was a bit embarrassed. Qin Zhao was giving him a hard time. Where's the thing I want? Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2372. I don't have the manual. Take the pills first. With that, Zhang Tianyi tossed over a transparent porcelain bottle. Inside the porcelain bottle were more than 10 pills that shone with a golden light. I heard that Taoists often eat their own pills and end up eating themselves to death. These aren't poisonous, right? Qin Zhao asked suspiciously, looking at the shining metallic color of the pills. Zhang Tianyi was so angry that he spat out blood. He pointed at Qin Zhao. You're pissing me off. If you don't want them, give them back to me. I don't have enough for my disciples. You really didn't put any heavy metals in it? Qin Zhao questioned mercilessly. You really didn't put any heavy metals in it. I don't want to talk to a blind bastard like you. Zhang Tianyi turned and left angrily. Before he left, he took Wang Hai and the others as well as the survivors. When Wang Hai and the others left, they felt the gaze on their backs. They all shivered. They wished they could grow another pair of legs to escape from that gaze. Sect leader, that person is really fierce. Wang Hai, who was following beside Zhang Tianyi, mumbled in a low voice. Fierce? What did you see just now count as? Zhang Tianyi snorted. Tell them to watch their mouths. Don't go around spouting nonsense or they'll get into trouble. If that bastard really wants to kill people, even I can't stop him. Sect leader, that person is so fierce. If he has bad intentions, alright, don't say anything else. Don't say it again. Be careful of the words that come out of your mouth. At their level and realm, there was no such thing as having bad intentions. The decisions they made were the ones that were most beneficial to them. The way they looked at things was that they were looking down from above. Thus, they decided that most of the time, they didn't need to rely on bad intentions to obtain benefits. They even had absolute priority in the ownership of certain things. They even had the right to occupy them. Since ancient times, bad intentions were just an excuse to attack those who didn't agree with them. Take the current disputes between countries for example. They were still using this excuse. Zhang Tianyi was a smart person. Of course, he knew what his subordinate meant by this. However, he didn't have any conflicts of interest with Qin Zhao. After all, Qin Zhao was rooted abroad while Zhang Tianyi's interests were in the country. The way they interacted with each other was quite natural. He didn't want their relationship to change too much. Don't think that the two of them didn't give each other any face. Always scheming against each other. In reality, this kind of scheme was harmless. He could trust Qin Zhao and Qin Zhao could also trust him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used Qin Zhao's hands to kill so many spiritualists. Qin Zhao should have turned against him long ago. This was also why Qin Zhao allowed his daughter to stay by his side without worry. If there was no trust between them, it would be impossible for them to let the other party take care of their loved ones. They hadn't gone far when a violent explosion came from behind, followed by a towering flame. The flames almost lit up the night sky. After half an hour, the fire truck finally arrived. West, how are Gaia, Hallis and Elite? After today's match, the three of them seemed to have been enlightened. They're suddenly not nervous anymore, West said over the phone. Yes, are you all at the hotel? Yes, guild leader. Are you coming over? I'll send some things over. I just extorted them, Qin Zhao said. Then we'll wait for you at the hotel. Qin Zhao arrived at the hotel where the supernatural organization team was staying. The three of them were sparring within the barrier of the underground garage, while the others were watching from outside the barrier. In a sparring situation, Hallis was undoubtedly the weakest. The two people she faced were opponents of two extremes. It could be said that Gaia and Elite were a weaker version of Qin Zhao when they were together. Gaia had dragon blood. Her power was second only to Qin Zhao in the supernatural organization. Angelite's speed was second only to Qin Zhao's in the supernatural organization. Her strongest trump card was the Abyss Demon. But she couldn't summon it so easily. For one, summoning and maintaining it required a huge amount of magic power. Even she found it difficult. Moreover, the Abyss Demon was powerful. It was used to deal with enemies. It wasn't used during sparring. Of course, Elite and Gaia couldn't use their trump cards during sparring either. Even so, Hallie still lost first. Elite and Gaia were left fighting in the barrier. However, in the following sparring session, neither Gaia nor Elite could do anything to the other. Basically, if they didn't use their trump cards, they wouldn't be able to decide the winner. Even if they used their trump cards, both of them would probably be heavily injured. Plus, it was the second match tomorrow. So they still had a sense of propriety when sparring. Come, let's split the candies. One for each. Qin Zhao took out the pills he'd extorted. Gaia, Hallie's and Elite were obviously the first to get the pills. They urgently needed to improve. But improving their power wasn't something that could be done in a day. The refreshing cleansing pill wasn't a pill that could directly improve one's power. It was equivalent to cleansing one's tendons and meridians. It could increase one's sensitivity to the spiritual qi in the world. When using magic, it could be released faster and could also release more power. But the improvement wouldn't be too obvious. It would just be a silent nourishment. It couldn't be said that there was no help to them in the second match, but the improvement was very limited. After the three of them took the elixir, the intensity of their reactions varied. Hallie's reaction was the strongest. She even showed signs of drowsiness. She was immediately sent back to her room to rest. Gaia and Angelite's reactions were weaker. The next day, the second match began. The three didn't receive any special treatment in this match. After drawing lots, it was a real battle. Unlike the first match, everyone had hidden their power and trump cards. The second match was basically the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displaying their abilities. Whatever trump cards and moves he had, he was going to use them in this match. Because from now on, every time they won a match, they would improve greatly. The glory they could obtain would also multiply. So everyone gave it their all. Some of the matches even used big moves. Among the three, Hallie's was the first to enter the ring. But what was unexpected was that Horace defeated her opponent easily, like how the autumn wind swept away the fallen leaves. Qin Zhao, who was below the ring, suspected that he'd received special treatment again. But Gaia and Angelite's match wasn't so easy. Gaia was actually the first to be eliminated. Demon is beside me, demon is beside me. Chapter 2373. Everyone was surprised by this loss. But it was reasonable. This battle on the arena was extremely brutal. Both Gaia and her opponent had their own strengths. Gaia lost, but her opponent wasn't much better than her. It was almost certain that she would be eliminated in the next round. Gaia was carried off the stage. Of course, Qin Zhao had checked Gaia. Her injuries were serious, but they weren't life-threatening. Elite had to be more careful in the following matches. Perhaps he had learned from Gaia's defeat. This time, Elite didn't hold back. He used all his big moves. The opponent was stunned by Angelite's attack. Elite didn't give his opponent any time to react. Of the 3 arena battles, Elite won the most easily. Of course, there were many factors that contributed to his win. It wasn't something that could be summed up with just one word: strength. From the magic characteristics of both sides to the psychological state of each other, everything was the key to the final outcome. Even if Gaia lost and Elite and Hallie's won, it didn't mean that there was a difference in their strength. After this round of arena battles, there were 256 participants left. The next day, the third round began. Helith was eliminated in this round. Qin Zhao knew the person who eliminated Hallie's. It was Matthew from the church. Of course, he lost in such a fair competition. Even Qin Zhao didn't plan on teaching Matthew a lesson. Elite advanced with difficulty. In this battle, Elite used the same old trick again. But his opponent was prepared. Elite won the battle purely with his strength. There were 128 participants left. And the victor received a new piece of news. The next match wasn't a one-on-one. It was a 4-person mixed battle. Out of the 4 of them, only one could advance. Elite was well prepared, but he didn't have any advantage in this battle. So he lost without any surprise. But it was already a good result to get this ranking. Although they belonged to the 128, they were now collectively known as the Holy Glory's Top 100. Elite also represented the supernatural organization. So his achievement was one of the few honors of the organization. Elite had even created a historical record. He was the first person in North America to receive the honor of the Holy Glory Top 100. The last one was held in the real world. This time it was no longer a one-on-one tournament. Instead, 32 people would be thrown into a forest with complex terrain. Let these 32 people fight each other. There were no other rules other than not being allowed to kill. Until the last 10 people were decided, these 10 people were the 10 people of holy glory. In the spirit world, this was practically the highest honor. Qin Zhao brought the people from the supernatural organization to watch the final battle. What do you think? How do you feel? They are clearly stronger than anyone in our team. It's not just the 10 people who won in the end, it's the 32 people who are stronger than us. West was very emotional. Only after seeing it for himself could he understand the difference between them. Not only was there a gap in strength, but there was also a gap in experience and combat awareness. It wasn't that they weren't good enough, but that the other party was better. However, this did not discourage West. After all, the supernatural organization used to be the lowest and most unorthodox supernatural organization. Over the past year or so, they had managed to achieve their current ranking. It could be said that they were growing at an extremely fast speed. Of course, not including Qin Zhao, they were already at the middle level now. Moreover, the supernatural organization had an advantage that most other organizations did not have. Most of the members were very young. Even Gaia was only 32 this year. Moreover, Gaia had not been in contact with the spirit world for long. How much more could Gaia grow in the next 10 years? West believed that the next 10 years would be when the supernatural organization would truly grow. The Battle of the Holy Glory this time had opened a new door for them. Qin Zhao, when are you leaving? Bifla asked. Tomorrow, Qin Zhao said. Have you investigated Udal Loken? Bifla shook his head. The information is very limited. We only have Udal Loken's identity, and most of it was provided by Celestial Master Zhang. There are basically no valuable clues. I have some information here, but I'm not sure if it'll be useful to you, Qin Zhao said. I know a couple. Not long ago they were chased by Shiva sect. Then the Holy Knights got involved and took the couple away. Udal Loken seems to be targeting something from Shiva sect. Maybe there's a connection between the two. If you have any connections in the Holy Knights, you can investigate in this direction. Bifla nodded. Last time, I obtained the immortal bird's flesh from you. I've researched something here, but I haven't sorted it out yet. Once I've sorted out the information, I'll send someone to Los Angeles for you. This was what he and Qin Zhao had agreed to. Qin Zhao would give him the Red Eagle's flesh. Bifla would be in charge of research and sharing the results. Qin Zhao did not expect Bifla to find something so quickly. Oh, you have a lot of connections, Qin Zhao said. See if you can collect Nirvana magic. No problem. Qin Zhao had been in Istanbul for so long. If he had to talk about gains, it was that his relationship with Bifla grew stronger day by day. Bifla usually looked arrogant, but he actually had a lot in common with Qin Zhao. If there's nothing else, I'm going to work, Qin Zhao said. What? Do you need help? Bifla saw Qin Zhao's troubled expression. Seemed to be something troublesome. Buying gifts for my kids, Qin Zhao said helplessly. I can't help. Goodbye. Qin Zhao had a headache too. He could not ask someone else to do this. Of course, a headache was just a headache. Most of the time, problems that could be solved with money weren't problems at all. This time, whatever the supernatural organization wanted to buy, Qin Zhao would pay for it. After the Battle of the Holy Glory, everyone was very relaxed. So they were very relaxed when shopping. Without the pressure of the trial and competition, everyone was free both physically and mentally. For this, Qin Zhao even rented a plane, which saved him most of the trouble of traveling. After relaxing for an entire day, everyone finally set foot on their way back. Before leaving, Bifla even sent Qin Zhao and the others off at the airport. Although everyone was eager to return home, they still couldn't skip the 20-hour flight. 9 Heaven's Divine King. Chapter 2374. Portia was waiting at the airport. She watched as Qin Zhao's group walked out of the arrival gate with bags of all sizes. She'd received Qin Zhao's notice to arrive at 1 in the afternoon. But it was already 5 in the afternoon. Clearly, she'd been tricked by Qin Zhao again. Actually, Portia had already expected that Qin Zhao would trick her. So she'd delayed it for an hour. In the end, she'd underestimated Qin Zhao's shamelessness. After waiting for more than an hour, Qin Zhao was still nowhere to be seen. She'd wanted to just leave. But considering that she still had a large bill to pay, she endured it in the end. When she saw Qin Zhao's luggage, Portia cursed inwardly, evil capitalist. Smiling, Portia walked up. Boss. She opened her arms, wanting to help Qin Zhao carry Jerlin. No need. You're in charge of the cart. Portia's face darkened. This asterisk shoal has the nerve to make a weak girl like me carry so much luggage? Luckily, Gaia and the others helped Portia. Gaia, what happened to you? You didn't go overseas to fight, did you? Portia saw that Gaia's left arm was in a cast and there was a band-aid on her brow. That's right, Gaia admitted readily. Really? What level of competition was it? Was it on TV? Can you find the recording online? Oh, I'm afraid not. It was an underground boxing match, Gaia said, chuckling. What a pity. Portia knew that Qin Zhao's subordinates were all good fighters, especially Gaia. Apparently Gaia had a gym. It was also the most famous gym in America. Last time, Qin Zhao had talked to Gaia and heard that a venture capital firm wanted to invest in Gaia's gym. But Gaia didn't seem to agree, so the matter was left unsettled. After moving everything into the RV, Qin Zhao said goodbye to the supernatural organization. His family was obviously happy that he'd returned. Of course, they were even happier about the gifts Qin Zhao had brought back. Fei Lai already knew that Jerlin was fine. But after seeing the lively Jerlin with her own eyes, she was still very excited. When he got home he felt much more relaxed. But there were more things waiting for him. Forget about the brewery. That day, Denver came to find Qin Zhao with a pile of documents. In short, it was a mess. Most of them were troublesome. Even things like donations needed Qin Zhao's signature. The next day he went to the supernatural organization's headquarters. The members of the association all knew the result of the Battle of Holy Glory. Originally, many members thought that with their powerful strength, they would definitely be able to obtain a very good ranking. He had even obtained the title of Holy Glory, and even obtained the title of first place in the Holy Glory. However, the result disappointed most of them. Even an elite who had the best results, only managed to get into the top 100 of Holy Glory. After all, most members did not know what Holy Glory represented. He also didn't know what kind of enemies Gaia and the others would face in this Battle of Holy Glory. What's more, they didn't know was that most of the individuals and forces participating in the Holy Glory battle had the goal of entering the top 100. Apart from a few top-notch religions and factions, there were almost no small organizations that thought of seizing the title of Holy Glory. In the supernatural organization, only West could see it clearly. In the end, the supernatural organization's foundation was too weak. Right now it was a top-notch organization in North America. But on a global scale, the supernatural organization was nothing. And they were participating in the Battle of Holy Glory, a top-notch event. It was like the Olympic Games. No one could expect a small country to be in the top 10 of the medal table in their first Olympic Games. That was simply impossible. Of course, the members' disappointment also became the driving force that motivated them. The 10 people who had participated in the Battle of Holy Glory didn't say anything. When Qin Zhao came to the headquarters, he brought gifts for everyone. He even brought special gifts for the evil spirit groups. Just then a car stopped in front of the headquarters. Aduz had informed Qin Zhao that he was here for him. When Qin Zhao arrived, he saw that it was Felwood Cisco. Hey Felwood. Long time no see. Oh, Mr. Qin. Hi Felwood. How did you know that I'm back in Los Angeles? Qin Zhao remembered that he hadn't told Felwood. Mr. Denver told me about it. Felwood Cisco had once undertaken the construction of a brewery, so he was still connected to Denver. He'd also found out from Denver that Qin Zhao was back in Los Angeles. Today he'd gone to Mirror Lake Manor to visit Qin Zhao. But after hearing that Qin Zhao was out, he came here. The new headquarters of the supernatural organization was also built by Felwood's company. So Felwood was no stranger to this place. Mr. Qin, I wanted to tell you a few days ago, but I heard that you were on vacation, so I didn't disturb you. Your private airport has already started construction. It's less than 1 kilometer from here, but it's still under construction. If you're interested, you can go there and take a look. Oh, okay. Qin Zhao nodded. At the same time, he thought of something else. Oh, I told you last time that I have a big project to do. You said that you need to hire more construction workers. How's it going? Felwood Cisco had actually come to find Qin Zhao today because he wanted to probe Qin Zhao's thoughts on this matter. He was indeed expanding the construction team, but the number of people was limited. He'd only hired less than 150 construction workers. It was mainly because they hadn't signed the contract yet. Moreover, this project was only a verbal promise from Qin Zhao. He hadn't even seen the shadow of it yet. Therefore, he didn't dare to hire too many people lest the company collapse. He didn't expect Qin Zhao to ask this question. Mr. Qin, the company has hired about 2 more construction teams, but because the company's cash flow is a bit tight, we can only hire this many people for now. Also, you haven't taken me to see the construction site, so I'm not sure how many people we need. Yes, that's my problem. But don't worry. This project will take about a month. I'll let you know when it's done. Okay, I'll continue hiring. Felwood now treated Qin Zhao as the god of fortune. More than half of the company's business was done by Qin Zhao or introduced by him. For example, Stevens Hilltop Manor. Chapter 2375. Qin Zhao hadn't paid attention to Sardinia's starry night shadow, which was the current location of Nanchi Island. However, he still knew the rough location. After all, when Qin Zhao had landed on Nanchi Island, he'd found Sardinia's heart and injected dark magma into it. Therefore, he could sense his rough location. Furthermore, it was approaching the sea area that he had purchased, where Little Nine and Amon were currently lurking. Amon's body was a bit too big now, so he couldn't enter Mirror Lake from the river. Little Nine's body was also catching up. Although he wasn't as big as Amon, he wasn't that far off. Now they were basically moving around Moon Beach in the personal sea area Qin Zhao had bought. Ever since Qin Zhao had bought that sea area, the American Bureau of Land Management had been asking about him every few days. They were wondering if Qin Zhao would buy more empty sea areas. Nanchi Island was only 100 kilometers away from Qin Zhao's sea area. Based on Sardinia's speed, it would probably take them about a month to reach the private sea area. When Qin Zhao saw the Bureau of Land Management's call, he immediately hung up. Felwood's caution was understandable. After all, it was impossible for Felwood to hire a large number of construction workers with just his 2 lips. However, under the circumstances where he didn't even have the shadow of a contract, he first recruited more than 100 workers. This was a sign of trust in Qin Zhao. After Felwood and Felwood left, Qin Zhao continued to stay at the headquarters. They'd been gone for almost 20 days. There were many things piled up in the association. Most of them could be solved by the remaining members. However, there were still some things that the remaining members couldn't solve. President Tota Belster secretly sent you a letter a while ago. He wants you to meet him when you come back. But how's he doing in the psionic team? Has his identity been exposed? No, West said. Seems like the people in the psionic team treat him as a hidden expert. It was funny. A liar was actually treated as an expert by a supernatural organization. But it was understandable. After all, the psionic team's foundation was too weak. They were much weaker than the supernatural organization. Not to mention the existence of a super expert like Qin Zhao. Even the normal members were several levels weaker than the supernatural organization. Right now, the mana users team didn't rely on inheritances or fame. It was purely a lure of money. Therefore, the level and strength of the spiritualists that could be recruited varied. There were 1 or 2 experts, but the vast majority of them were trash trying to fish in troubled waters. Of course, they wouldn't be considered trash. In fact, there were still some who had a certain level of strength and fame in North America. However, if placed in the entire spirit world, he would basically be at the bottom of the barrel. In North America, there was basically no control over magic. Aside from Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, there were the supernatural organization and the psionic team. In the other regions, there were only a small number of mediocre spiritualists. A small number of cities were occupied by powerful evil forces. Some supernatural organizations that broke the law loved to do evil in North America. Because no one here could control them and no one dared to. Even if they were exposed, they had ways to escape. Compared to other countries and regions which strictly controlled executives and high risks, it was different. There was basically no need to worry about these issues in North America. Qin Zhao and West had never taken the psionic team seriously. Apart from the difference in strength. More importantly, it was the difference in outlook. Even after participating in the Battle of Holy Glory. Even before participating in the Battle of Holy Glory, Their outlook was more than one level lower. To the supernatural organization, the psionic team was like a country bumpkin. The reason why they hadn't killed the psionic team was because they needed an opponent. They weren't there to motivate the supernatural organization. They were there to block the lightning. If the psionic team was destroyed, a new team would definitely appear to fight against the supernatural organization. Therefore, Qin Zhao and West decided to keep the psionic team. The psionic team might be growing with abundant funds. The number of people in the psionic team continued to expand. In fact, sending Gaia, Ing Elite and Heliais could directly destroy the psionic team. With such strength, how could Qin Zhao and West take them seriously? Underestimating the enemy? That didn't exist. In the spirit world, there were also many ants that could bite an elephant to death. But how many people did that have to be? Excluding other factors, the greater the difference in power between spiritualists, the greater the difference in combat power. Where did Bayers ask me to meet? South Coast, West said. Can't he just call me if he needs anything? The supporter behind the psionic team is the security department. It's too easy to check their communication. Does Tota Belster dare to call you? If he does, he'll be dead on the streets tomorrow. One had to admit that this liar was very cautious. If he used a paper letter, the security department and the psionic team wouldn't be able to find out no matter how powerful they were. The American intelligence department was very powerful, but they weren't omnipotent. As long as one was careful, even a normal person could avoid being noticed. In the past month, Tota Belster hadn't improved in other areas. However, his anti-detection abilities were improving day by day. It couldn't be helped. He was in the tiger's den now. Fortunately, everyone in the psionic team treated him as an otherworldly master. No one dared to be disrespectful to him and no one dared to test him. After all, he'd helped the psionic team solve a few big problems in the past month. These big problems were actually solved by the supernatural organization in the dark. Then they'd put the credit on his head. It wasn't that Tota Belster hadn't thought about joining the enemy. But after a month of observation, he could roughly see the difference in power between the psionic team and the supernatural organization. Especially when he'd seen Qin Zhao fight. It was indescribably terrifying. If the psionic team and the supernatural organization really started an all-out war one day, then the psionic team would definitely lose. Because Qin Zhao had left too deep an impression on him. He'd seen many spiritualists and magicians in the past month. But he really couldn't compare to Qin Zhao. They weren't on the same level at all. So Tota Belster gave up on the idea of being a double agent. After all, the risk was too high. If he wasn't careful, he could die on the streets. Chapter 2376. Tota Belster was wearing traditional Chinese martial arts attire. Those who didn't understand his personality would think that he was an otherworldly master. Qin Zhao saw Tota Belster. He was standing under the shade of a tree along the shore. This place could block most people's vision and there was no one around. With Qin Zhao's senses, there were basically no watchers. President, Tota Belster greeted him. This was also his way of expressing his identity and stance. Regardless of whether Qin Zhao suspected him or not, calling him president did feel good. Yes, thank you, Qin Zhao said calmly. How does it feel to be a spy in the psionic team? Is it dangerous? After all, being a spy was a high-risk job. Qin Zhao had to show some care. It's okay, but... Tota stuttered, his eyes flashing as he looked at Qin Zhao. But what? There are always people testing me every now and then, Tota said, troubled. I always get away with it, so I'm worried that I'll be exposed one day. Actually, at the beginning, the psionic team had indeed been testing him. But after the sparring, they acknowledged Tota Belster's strength. They felt that sparring with a master could improve themselves. However, Tota would always find all sorts of excuses to reject them. This request still gave him quite a bit of pressure. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin. I see. This did indeed put Tota Belster under great pressure and danger. At the end of the day, Tota Belster was just an ordinary person. It wasn't easy for him to mix with a bunch of spiritualists without exposing his identity. I'll help you think of something when I get back, Qin Zhao said. But for now, Qin Zhao didn't have any good ideas. Qin Zhao was sure that there wasn't any in this world, just like in movies. At least he hadn't heard of such a method. Imparting spiritual power to a spiritualist could temporarily increase their magic power, but it would gradually disappear over time. If he were to impart his cultivation technique to an ordinary person, it would be a problem for him to not even have 1% of his immortal force left in a few days. Basically, 99% of the immortal power would disappear and the remaining 1% would disappear over a few days. The reason why ordinary people were ordinary people was because they had no way to preserve the spiritual energy and magic power of the world. You haven't gone to Bermuda yet? Qin Zhao asked. We haven't set off yet. We should have set off a week ago, but we were delayed by other matters. Toddy Belster said. According to Yang at the time, it seemed that a very special geographical environment was discovered in the Mexican border area. In Yang's words, it was called a dangerous place. Then, someone did something there, so the psionic team went there to deal with the problem. At that time, Vestana wanted me to go too, but I used my injuries as an excuse to reject her request. At that time, Vestana brought 30 people with her, but when she came back, only 10 were left. Almost all of them were injured, but because of the urgency from above, they are now preparing for the expedition to Bermuda. Above. Anti-Terrorism Security Department? No, it's from the higher-ups. It's said that a fleet from the military went missing near Bermuda. Of course, the military has to take responsibility for it, and the psionic team is the main party responsible. The higher-ups have ordered that the Bermuda incident must be resolved within a month. An entire fleet went missing? Yes, the fleet cruising in the Atlantic Ocean. Why did that fleet go to Bermuda for no reason? Do you want to die? Qin Zhao frowned. That's because 2 more cruise ships have disappeared in the nearby waters recently, and their nautical coordinates were in the vicinity before they disappeared. The number of missing people is more than 1,000, and the disappearance of these 2 cruise ships has been publicized on the internet. Under pressure, the government could only send a fleet to Bermuda to investigate, but this time even the entire fleet disappeared. Qin Zhao frowned. He had a rough idea of what was occupying the waters of Bermuda. If the psionic team went, they would probably die too. How many people does Vestana plan to bring this time? All of them, Toddy Belster said. President, do you know what's going on there? A little, not much, Qin Zhao said. But with the psionic team's strength, if they go there, it won't be an expedition. It'll be sending sheep to the tiger's mouth. Then won't I be in danger? Toddy Belster panicked. At the end of the day, he was just a liar. Not to mention going to such a dangerous place, even a small evil spirit could kill him. Hearing Qin Zhao talk about the dangers of Bermuda, he was even more unsure. The entire psionic team would be sending sheep to the tiger's mouth. How could a defenseless liar like him be any better? Can you think of a way to reject it? I can't. I've already rejected a few missions before, Toddy Belster said, troubled. Do you have a specific time? No, but I think I'll need half a month to prepare. Okay, hold on for half a month, Qin Zhao said. I'll think of a way in that time. Anyway, I won't let you die. Even if I can't think of a way in the end, you can just tell me. I'll come and pick you up. No matter what, Toddy Belster had no obligation to die for Qin Zhao. The most Qin Zhao could do to restrain him was to kill him. Qin Zhao didn't plan on killing him after he was dead. Since he was willing to risk his life for him, Qin Zhao had to at least arrange a backup plan for him. Take this check. Toddy Belster took a deep breath when she saw the number on the check. I'll do what I promised you. I'll also think of a way to ensure your safety, Qin Zhao said. After this is over, you can take the money and go wherever you want. Toddy Belster was a normal person. Qin Zhao couldn't let him join the supernatural organization. One dues was enough for the supernatural organization. They didn't need another. Toddy wasn't free yet. After all, he was a spy now. If he left for too long, people would definitely remember him. So after a few hurried words, they separated temporarily. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, was thinking about how to keep Toddy Belster's secret. Telling the psionic team was definitely the last choice. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Qin Zhao didn't want Toddy to tell the psionic team either. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.